High school student Park Jin-yong lives by one unwavering absolute rule: treat every single woman like an inanimate rock. So when a female classmate casually greets him in the school hallway, all his brain sees is a literal gray boulder wearing a tie, leaving him completely unfazed by her presence. This bizarre coping mechanism was forged in the painful fires of elementary school heartbreak, where Jin-yong suffered 20 soul-crushing rejections. From girls weeping in terror to brutal dismissals on the playground, his young heart was utterly shattered. Broken-hearted, he retreated to his bedroom and sought emotional counsel from an imaginary companion. Enter Jason, his trusty imaginary advisor, who offered the ultimate survival strategy: simply view every female as a harmless, inanimate stone. Jin-yong embraced this advice religiously, practicing intense mind control until his brain rewired itself completely. By middle school, his vision remapped reality so well that every girl appeared as a literal rock face. Back in the present, a female classmate approaches him to ask if he is free after school to help her study. But Jason's second golden rule instantly kicks in: never delude yourself into thinking a girl likes you just because she smiles. Without missing a single beat, Jin-yong coldly declines her request and walks away. Thanks to this rock-solid mental filter, socializing is a breeze since nobody catches feelings for a piece of granite. As Jin-yong strolls down the hallway chatting with his trusty imaginary buddy, Jason manifests not as a cute childhood ghost, but as a hilariously buff, mustachioed man perched right on his shoulder. The hyper-muscular imaginary mentor expresses concern that Jin-yong will end up single forever, but Jin-yong remains steadfast in his choice. He would much rather live as a peaceful hermit than risk being branded a creep ever again. 5 full years of seeing women as rocks has completely erased his interest in romantic relationships. As he steps outside the school campus, a gentle voice calls out from behind him. A girl catches up holding a smartphone he accidentally dropped on the pavement. When Jin-yong turns around to face her, he is greeted by an elegant female student holding out his lost device. Jin-yong freezes on the spot, his eyes widening in total disbelief as his mental blueprint suddenly collapses. For the first time in 5 long years, his impenetrable defense mechanism shatters into pieces. Standing right before his eyes is a girl whose breathtaking face does not look like a stone at all. Panicking at the sight of an actual human female face for the first time in 5 long years, Jin-yong's brain completely short-circuits. Unable to maintain his hard-earned composure, his mental filter breaks down entirely as he accidentally blurts out that Sunwoo is really pretty right to her face. The absolute instant those reckless words leave his mouth, pure horror takes over. As Sunwoo blushes in total surprise and stammers out a confused response, Jin-yong hastily snatches his dropped smartphone right out of her hand, feeling completely mortified by his own sudden romantic outburst. Yelling a frantic thank you alongside a breathless apology, our thoroughly embarrassed high schooler turns around and bolts away at top speed. He leaves a bewildered Sunwoo standing all by herself outside the school building, wonderingly trying to figure out what on earth just happened. Jin-yong frantically sprints down the street like a panicked track athlete, screaming at himself for complimenting a complete stranger on day 1. His mind spirals completely out of control as he imagines horrifying rumors about his awkward behavior spreading like wildfire across the entire student body. Safely retreated inside his bedroom, Jin-yong slumps in utter frustration, while his buff imaginary buddy tries to reassure him that the compliment was actually quite charming. However, Jin-yong remains deeply unsettled, unable to comprehend why Sunwoo is the only female student who bypasses his stone vision. As dark memories of brutal elementary school rejections resurface in his head, Jin-yong shudders at the thought of being labeled a total creep all over again. Paralyzed by the terrifying prospect of history repeating itself, he collapses onto the wooden floor in a dramatic puddle of despair. Refusing to watch his partner wallow in dramatic self-pity, Jason promptly delivers a swift imaginary punch straight to Jin-yong's head. Rubbing his sore scalp, our flustered protagonist is forcefully ordered to snap out of his doom spiral and formulate a rational survival strategy right away. Jason logically points out that since they belong to different classrooms, Jin-yong simply needs to dodge Sunwoo during school hours. Reassured by this sensible, evasive plan, Jin-yong heads to campus the next morning fully confident he can maintain his peaceful isolation. Unfortunately, that grand evasive strategy immediately crumbles the moment he steps into the busy school corridor. Sunwoo casually walks right up to greet him with a friendly smile, instantly sending Jin-yong into another high-stakes emergency council meeting with his ever-present muscular advisor. Determined to salvage his cool demeanor, Jin-yong resolves to treat her like any other inanimate stone. But his remaining composure completely dissolves when Sunwoo giggles and proudly announces to her rock-faced classmate that he was the exact guy who called her pretty yesterday. When Sunwoo playfully leans in and asks if she looks pretty today as well, her stone-faced classmate simply laughs in light-hearted amusement. Surprised by this sudden, overwhelming display of confidence, Jin-yong stands completely frozen on the spot, utterly unable to process the bewildering interaction unfolding right before his eyes. Convinced that the classmate's laughter is just another cruel setup to mock him, Jin-yong turns on his heel and bolts down the school hallway at maximum velocity. Perched comfortably on his shoulder, his ever-vigilant imaginary mentor enthusiastically praises the hasty retreat, warning him never to let his guard down again. Left standing in utter confusion, Sunwoo watches him sprint away into the distance, completely mystified by his erratic behavior. But dodging her proves virtually impossible for our anxious protagonist, because her striking human face stands out like a glowing beacon amidst a sea of identical gray stone heads. Determined to preserve his hard-earned isolation, Jin-yong spends the remainder of the school day executing intense stealth maneuvers, ducking behind trees and slipping through doorways whenever she attempts to greet him. By evening, a thoroughly discouraged Sunwoo is left wondering why he goes out of his way to treat her like a plague. Thoroughly exhausted after a grueling day of tactical hide-and-seek, Jin-yong trudges home under the sunset while discussing the ordeal with his miniature shoulder advisor. Even though Jason offers words of praise for his survival, Jin-yong can only groan in frustration over how hopelessly complicated his once peaceful high school life has become. Just as he believes he has successfully made it back home, Sunwoo suddenly materializes right in front of him on the quiet sidewalk. Caught completely off guard by her unexpected appearance, Jin-yong shrieks and jumps back in total terror, utterly horrified to find his evasive plan shattered by a direct ambush. Having reached her absolute limit with his mysterious behavior, Sunwoo confronts him head-on and demands a straight answer once and for all. She sternly lists every single one of his evasive habits, ignoring her greetings, breaking eye contact, and running away, and asks if she somehow offended him. Calling him genuinely weird, she gazes at him intently while Jin-yong's internal alarm bells ring at full volume. Terrified that she has completely misconstrued his intentions, our panicking protagonist stammers out a hesitant response, desperately searching for any plausible cover story before his social standing is ruined forever. With terrifying visual memories of his stone-filtered reality flashing across his mind, Jin-yong realizes that hiding behind excuses is no longer an option. Cornered beneath her piercing gaze, he takes a deep breath and blurts out the unbelievable truth. Every female on Earth looks like a literal rock to him, except for her. Sunwoo freezes in total surprise as Jin-yong's unbelievable confession hangs in the quiet evening air. The instant those absurd words leave his mouth, our panic-stricken protagonist frantically calls out for his muscular imaginary advisor, who can only drop his head and sigh in deep, defeated sorrow, while Jin-yong trembles uncontrollably under her piercing gaze. Fully bracing his fragile heart for another soul-crushing rejection, Sunwoo does not laugh or walk away. Instead, a warm, radiant smile spreads across her face, catching our paranoid high schooler completely off guard. Stepping closer, Sunwoo casually asks for his name. After Jin-yong nervously stammers out his full identity, she gently grabs him by the tie, leans into his face, and playfully whispers that his wild confession was actually smooth flirting, causing his overburdened brain to short-circuit entirely. As Sunwoo cheerfully waves goodbye and strolls away down the sidewalk, Jin-yong solemnly reflects on the two absolute survival rules Jason taught him back in elementary school. Golden rule number 1 was to treat every single girl like an inanimate stone, a strategy that has now officially collapsed. Golden rule number 2 was never to delude himself by spinning happy romantic fantasies. But as his heart pounds furiously against his chest and his face flushes bright red, our former social hermit realizes with utter terror that rule number 2 has just failed as well. Jin-yong's peaceful world shatters as Sunwoo leans in ridiculously close, whispering that his flustered reaction was blatant flirting, leaving his inner wiring completely fried. He desperately tries recalling the holy commandments handed down by his imaginary life coach Jason: treat girls like inanimate rocks, and never, under any circumstances, spin romantic fantasies. Both rules instantly crumble to dust. One glimpse of Sunwoo sends him spiraling through a high-speed life flash from marriage to high school parent drama and a shared hospital bed. Back in his bedroom, muscle-bound imaginary mentor Jason delivers a physical reality check punch, pointing out that 5 years of stone vision left him with zero defense against an actual human female. Treating girls like boulders originally protected young Jin-yong from harsh rejections. But now that a non-stone girl has appeared, his inner coward is crawling right back out. To prevent history from repeating itself, Jason unveils the desensitization plan. Jin-yong must look Sunwoo directly in the face until he regains total composure. The next day in the hallway, Jin-yong puts the strategy into practice. But squinting intensely without proper vision makes his casual glance look like a full-blown serial killer glare. With mini Jason perched on his shoulder, advising him to fix his terrifying expression by smiling, Jin-yong readies his ultimate friendly face. Unfortunately, his attempt at a smile results in a cursed demon-tier grin that leaves Sunwoo and her friend visibly unsettled by his unhinged hallway behavior. Even Jason can barely stomach Jin-yong's terrifying attempt at a friendly face, urging his anxious disciple to retreat before someone calls campus security. Our hopeless romantic turns on his heel and bolts down the hallway, leaving Sunwoo watching his unhinged exit with a mixture of confusion and a faint blush. As Jin-yong scurries away, Sunwoo's chatty classmate steps in with some prime high school gossip. She reveals that despite his bizarre behavior today, Jin-yong actually enjoys a surprising reputation among the female student body, intriguing Sunwoo further. The friend explains that multiple girls have tried initiating conversation with him, only to be completely stonewalled. 5 years of treating women like literal rocks accidentally transformed Jin-yong into the ultimate mysterious lone wolf, making him look like a cool guy who is entirely above high school romance. When her friend playfully asks if she's falling for him because of his intense hallway glaring, Sunwoo flushes bright pink and desperately tries to play off her reaction. She insists it is nothing, but her flustered expression says otherwise. Reflecting back on their mysterious sunset meeting near the crosswalk, Sunwoo narrows her eyes with a mischievous smirk. There is definitely something about this socially awkward stonewatcher that has been bugging her mind, and she is not about to let him off the hook easily. Back in classroom 22, Jin-yong leans against the lockers to hold an emergency tactical meeting with tiny Jason. He argues that following Sunwoo through the corridors while staring relentlessly is not desensitization. It is high-grade stalker behavior that will only land him in social ruin. Sitting solemnly on his shoulder, Jason roasts his student for being forced to choose between looking like a coward or a creep. Seeking a safer alternative, Jin-yong suggests finding her social media photos online so he can practice looking at her face in the privacy of his room. Jason flashes an enthusiastic thumbs up, but immediately reframes the plan by ordering Jin-yong to walk right up to Sunwoo and ask for her handle directly. Stalking her profile in secret would be the ultimate loser move, leaving Jin-yong groaning at his mentor's ruthless honesty. Summoning every shred of bravery left in his fragile spirit, Jin-yong cornered Sunwoo in the hallway and shoves his phone forward, nervously stuttering out a request for her Instagram handle. Sunwoo pauses in surprise, taking in his trembling posture. To Jin-yong's utter disbelief, Sunwoo gives a charming, flirtatious smile and agrees without missing a beat. She tells him to open the app so she can type her ID in herself, leaving our panicking protagonist thrilled that his terrifying quest was going smoother than expected. However, the moment Sunwoo grabs his device and looks down at the screen, her confident smirk vanishes into total bewilderment. Displayed on the phone is a squeaky clean, newly minted account with 0 posts, 0 followers, 0 following, and the name Park Jin-yong prominently displayed. Sunwoo looks up and directly asks if he literally just created this profile minutes ago. Sweating profusely, Jin-yong admits that he never uses social media and had to quickly set one up in a rush, asking nervously if there is any issue. Unable to contain herself, Sunwoo erupts into a fit of uncontrolled laughter right in front of him. With a mischievous point of her finger, she teases him mercilessly for making her the absolute first person he searched for after opening his brand new account. As Sunwoo doubles over in an absolute fit of laughter right in front of him, Jin-yong realizes with sheer horror that she has read his secret intentions like an open book. He desperately turns to his imaginary life coach for a tactical escape plan, but Mini Jason takes one look at the train wreck and coldly informs his pupil that he is completely cooked. Stammering like a broken record, our flustered protagonist attempts a desperate cover-up, trembling uncontrollably, as he insists she was merely the very first person he bumped into after setting up the profile. His inner awkward coward leaks out for the entire school to see, while Sunwoo's delighted giggles continue to ring down the hallway. Just when Jin-yong thinks his fragile social reputation cannot take any more damage, Sunwoo steps right back into his personal space, holding up her phone dialer and mischievously asking if he would rather have her actual phone number. Before his fried brain can even process the offer, she playfully jabs his chest, laughing that his flustered reactions are simply way too entertaining to resist. After typing in her handle and following herself, Sunwoo hands back the phone and cheerfully instructs him to go like plenty of her posts before skipping off. Left behind in the corridor, Jin-yong stands completely motionless, looking like a frozen statue, while his overloaded circuits try to make sense of what just transpired. Predictably, his hopelessly romantic brain instantly spirals into high gear, projecting a full cinematic life flash from a knees-down marriage proposal and picking baby names to dealing with a dramatic teenage child. Fortunately, tiny Jason sitting on his shoulder snaps him back to reality, sternly commanding him to stop playing back the mental film reel. Later that evening, Sunwoo kicks back on her bedroom bed and pulls up Jin-yong's profile, immediately bursting into laughter at his very first upload. Displayed on her phone screen is a hilariously rigid close-up selfie with 0 lighting or angle awareness, prompting her to roast his awful photography skills out loud. Meanwhile, back at home, our stone-watching hero sleeps peacefully in his blue pajamas, totally oblivious to the world. Past midnight, his phone screen suddenly glows with a fresh notification, confirming Sunwoo tapped the heart on his goofy picture after all, capping off his wildly chaotic day with a sweet digital victory. Inside the classroom, Suk-young's friend is absolutely buzzing with excitement after learning that Jin-yong went out of his way to create a brand new social media account just to ask for her contact details. Curious about his reputation around school, she asks Suk-young whether Jin-yong truly ignores all other girls, and Suk-young proudly confirms that she is the sole exception to his distant behavior. When Jin-yong conveniently walks past the classroom window right on cue, Suk-young decides to demonstrate her romantic hold over him on the spot. Her friend looks back in total shock, wondering what kind of outrageous stunt she is about to pull, in the middle of the hallway. Suk-young steps outside and dramatically collapses onto the floor against a backdrop of imaginary flower petals, striking a helpless pose while whimpering that she has fallen and desperately needs Jin-yong to help her up. Hearing the sudden shout, Jin-yong stops in the hallway and glances back to see what is going on. Unfortunately for her dramatic performance, Jin-yong's stone-filtering perception turns Suk-young into a literal gray boulder sitting on the tiles. Completely unaffected by her helpless routine, he casually grabs the hood of her yellow sweatshirt, hoists her upright like a harvested radish, and walks away without saying a single word. Sunwoo breaks into uncontrollable laughter at the ridiculous display, clutching her stomach as she mercilessly mocks Soo-young for being pulled up like garden produce. Left standing in total humiliation after her plan backfires, Soo-kun can only stare blankly before muttering a quiet curse under her breath. Later outside on the campus grounds, Jin-yong walks while staring intently at Sunwoo's social media page on his phone. Tiny imaginary mentor Jason hitches right on his sass, asking if he has gotten used to her face yet. Jin-yong blushes as he gazes at her sunset balcony photo, confessing that every time he sees her, his heart experiences a completely different flutter. Taking the matter with utmost seriousness, pocket-sized Jason strokes his mustache and insists they must determine the root cause behind why Sunwoo is the only girl immune to Jin-yong's stone vision. Jin-yong ponders the mystery, wondering why her face remains vividly human while every other girl looks like a lifeless rock. Before Jason can lay out his scientific hypotheses, Jin-yong suddenly gasps and freezes in his tracks as he spots Sunwoo standing near a brick building. She appears to be agonizing over her own secret trouble, but turns her head sharply the moment she notices him approaching. The instant Sunwoo greets him with a gentle smile, Jin-yong's heart experiences an immediate system overload. Face this turning bright crimson and muscles tensing up in sheer panic, he clutches his chest while struggling to contain the overwhelming rush of emotions flooding his brain. Sunwoo catches up to Jin-yong right outside the school gates, putting on a worried expression while claiming she desperately needs bus fare to get home. When Jin-yong points out that her apartment complex is literally right across the street, she quickly backpedals, blushing red, while blaming her inability to walk those few steps on a sudden, highly convenient flare-up of chronic anemia. Jin-yong innocently pulls out his wallet to hand over every single villain he owns, but Sunwoo swats it away with a grin, claiming that taking his money would make her look like a playground extortionist. Instead, she casually demands that he walk her all the way home, leaving our bewildered hero completely frozen in shock as she happily leads the way. As they stroll side by side down the glowing Sunset Street, Sunwoo rambles on continuously without taking a single breath. Jin-yong, meanwhile, walks at her like a rigid wooden statue in a state of total system overload, his brain panicking so intensely from her close physical presence that he cannot comprehend a single word coming out of her mouth. This overwhelming walk home brings back a deeply traumatic flashback from Jin-yong's childhood. When he used to walk home after school with a female classmate he harbored a secret crush on. Their peaceful afternoon routine came to a sudden, devastating end when a group of neighborhood kids caught them together and loudly taunted them about dating. Deeply embarrassed by the teasing, the girls screamed that nobody would ever date someone like him, thoroughly stomping on his fragile young feelings. That harsh rejection ended their daily walks forever, leaving Jin-yong to walk home alone in soul-crushing isolation while his romantic hopes withered away long before he ever had the courage to confess. Snapping back to reality, Jin-yong desperately prays for this awkward situation to end as fast as possible, comforting himself with the fact that Sunwoo normally takes the bus, so this nightmare will never happen again. However, right as he thinks he is finally home free, a dramatic, pained groan from right behind him causes his heart to drop. Spinning around in surprise, Jin-yong is completely flabbergasted to see Sunwoo sprawled out flat on the brick pavement, dramatic distress bubbles rising around her as she pants hysterically for air. She loudly curses the slight uphill slope of the road, once again hiding behind her infamous chronic anemia as the sole cause of her sudden physical defeat. Lying helplessly on the ground, Sunwoo reaches out her slender hand, gazing up at him while feebly asking if he can help support her walk. Completely panicking, Jin-yong frantically reaches down to grip her soft hand, gently hauling her back up to her feet while promising to immediately adjust his walking speed to a snail's pace. While Sunwoo takes a moment to recover her strength, Jin-yong stares down at his trembling hand in absolute, brain-melting shock, overwhelmed by the earth-shattering realization that he was just holding hands with a real girl. With his pulse racing out of control, he panics as his inner movie theater prepares to replay the entire embarrassing footage on loop. Recalling the hilarious spectacle from earlier, Sunwoo breaks into uncontrollable laughter and relentlessly teases Jin-yong about how he yanked Sooki-young upright by her yellow hoodie like a freshly harvested radish. Panicking under the sudden romantic interrogation, our flustered hero completely loses his cool, frantically sweating while yelling in denial that he doesn't even know who Sooki-young is. Having finally walked her to her neighborhood, Jin-yong seizes the immediate opportunity to bid a hasty farewell. As Sunwoo cheerfully waves goodbye and thanks him for the escort, Jin-yong practically vibrates with relief, celebrating the glorious fact that his nerve-wracking ordeal of walking home with a real girl is officially over. Strolling back down the glowing Sunset Street alone, our socially exhausted protagonist mutters to himself about how deeply uncomfortable that entire walk was. He desperately prays that her chronic anemia magically gets treated by tomorrow so she can take the bus, desperately hoping these terrifying heart-fluttering fantasies will finally leave his poor brain in peace. However, just as he breathes a triumphant sigh of relief and imagines he is home free, Sunwoo suddenly gasps as she realizes she forgot something important. Spinning around on her heel, she calls out his name across the quiet street, causing Jin-yong's heart to drop into his stomach as he freezes in place. Leaning in close with an irresistible smile, Sunwoo casually drops a massive bombshell explaining that it will take a while before she gets her allowance. Since she is completely out of bus fare, she sweetly announces that she will be counting on him to walk her home again tomorrow, leaving our bewildered hero completely defenseless. As Sunwoo pants dramatically, complaining that running back to him made her dizzy all over again, tiny imaginary mentor Jason strokes his mustache in deep contemplation. The pocket-sized advisor sternly calls out Jin-yong's blatant hypocrisy, reminding him that while he claims to find her uncomfortable and desperately wants to avoid her, Jin-yong is actually sporting the most hopelessly blissful, glowing smile of pure happiness imaginable. Unfortunately, his romantic reverie is abruptly shattered a second later by a sudden pained groan echoing behind him. Spinning around in total panic, Jin-yong is completely flabbergasted to find Sunwoo sprawled out on the pavement once again, gasping dramatically for air with bubbles rising around her face. Deeply concerned after her reckless sprint, he frantically yells at her, asking why she ran in the first place, and demanding that she just sit down to rest. The next day, inside the school hallway, a thoroughly humiliated Sooki-young aggressively practices martial arts low kicks against the lockers. When her bewildered friend asks what on earth she is doing, Sooki-young glares with pure vengeance, announcing that she is training strictly so she can beat the absolute crap out of Park Jin-yong for treating her like a radish. We pick up right where we left off in Jin-yong's bedroom, where his absurdly muscular imaginary companion Jason sits around completely shirtless. Jin-yong questions why Sunwoo is the single female student who actually looks human rather than a floating boulder, trying desperately to formulate a logical theory. After failing to reach any groundbreaking conclusions, Jin-yong decides it is best to postpone the deep philosophical investigation. He grabs his backpack from the floor and quickly exits his room, eager to get to school before things get any weirder. Out in the hallway, Jin-yong runs straight into his stern-looking father. He respectfully bows and asks if his dad slept well, but when offered a fresh bowl of his mother's kimchi stew, Jin-yong awkwardly declines, claiming he has zero appetite. His father sternly advises him to eat properly before walking away toward the living room fan. Jin-yong bazzoos out of the conversation, steps outside into the morning air, and stares into the distance with pure, unadulterated anxiety. As he approaches the school grounds, Jin-yong walks through the quiet hallway while a tiny, pocket-sized Jason perches on his shoulder. They debate whether he is doomed to remain at Sunwoo's mercy forever, right until a sudden voice calls out his name from behind. Jin-yong turns around to find Sunwoo blocking the hallway in her oversized yellow hoodie. With her arms folded tight, she looks him dead in the eye and bluntly declares her intention to beat him up, sending his brain into immediate reboot mode. She dramatically claims she stayed up all night practicing martial arts low kicks to avenge yesterday's tragic embarrassment. Unimpressed by her aggressive speech, Jin-yong effortlessly grabs her yellow hoodie collar and picks her up off the ground like a scruffed cat. Sunwoo holds up 3 fingers, generously offering to call it even if he just accepts 3 solid kicks to the shins. Jin-yong immediately rejects the deal, prompting her to yell out insults and unleash a swift low kick anyway. Soo-young has zero intention of letting Jin-yong off the hook after yesterday's low kick embarrassment. As our terrified protagonist bolts down the high school hallway in a desperate sprint for survival, the yellow-hooded menace effortlessly closes the gap behind him, charging forward with all the terrifying momentum of an unstoppable rolling boulder. Panicking as the high-speed human landslide rapidly closes in, Jin-yong can only watch in utter horror as Soo-young catches right up to his side with a triumphant yell. Determined to claim her long-awaited vengeance, she enthusiastically winds up a practiced martial arts low kick, fully intent on pulverizing his shins into fine dust once and for all. Just as Soo-young swings her leg with maximum force, Sunwoo innocently steps out of a nearby doorway to see what all the noise is about. Before anyone can react to her terrible timing, Soo-young's low kick misses Jin-yong completely and strikes Sunwoo's leg instead, instantly tearing her ankle ligament and leaving her clutching her leg in total agony. Horrified by the sudden accidental friendly fire, Jin-yong frantically attempts to pivot on his heels to check on his injured classmate. But bad luck strikes immediately. His slipper slides right out on the slick floor, sending him into a spectacular faceplant that slams his face into the hard tiles and instantly fractures his nasal bone. Soo-young stands completely paralyzed with shock as both of her victims lie sprawled out on the hallway floor like casualties of a mini war zone. Fast forward to the nurse's office, where Jin-yong and Sunwoo recover on side-by-side beds while Soo-young profusely apologizes, leaving Sunwoo to reassure Jin-yong that her friend has always been pretty weird like that. Finding himself awkwardly trapped alone with Sunwoo once again, Jin-yong internally panics and desperately calls out for his imaginary mentor, Jason. To his utter shock, the overly muscular phantom appears impeccably dressed in a 3-piece suit, calmly enjoying tea time while sternly reminding Jin-yong that he better not let his inner loser show through in front of her. Determined to keep his composure and avoid uttering anything foolish, Jin-yong listens closely as Sunwoo rolls onto her side and casually asks what the school is serving for lunch today. When he sheepishly answers that it might be fried yellow croaker, her face immediately lights up with genuine delight over the surprisingly great menu option. Sunwoo then asks if he usually eats breakfast at home before heading out to school each morning. Jin-yong awkwardly admits he normally skips it because his father is always home in the morning, making the house feel tense and uncomfortable, which prompts Sunwoo to offer some gentle encouragement about trying to get along better with his dad. As the quiet conversation settles into a comfortable lull, Jin-yong suddenly remembers Soo-young's earlier remark, which triggers the memory of his very first encounter with Sunwoo. He vividly recalls standing face-to-face with her in the hallway on their first meeting, when he was so overwhelmed by her appearance that he blurted out that she was really pretty. Back then, he had convinced himself that the blunt compliment was just an involuntary slip of the tongue, triggered by 5 long years of perceiving every female student as a floating boulder. But resting here in the quiet nurse's office, staring directly at her face, he begins to realize there might have been a much deeper truth behind his words. Staring right back at Sunwoo, Jin-yong silently acknowledges that she really is breathtakingly pretty. But when she catches him staring and playfully asks if he finds her gorgeous, our terrified hero completely loses his mind, flailing around while she bursts into fits of laughter. Realizing she was only pulling his leg, Jin-yong clutches his chest while his heart beats like a jackhammer. Sunwoo sits across from him and unabashedly admits that teasing him is already her absolute favorite pastime, leaving our flustered protagonist entirely at her mercy. She gleefully explains how hilarious it is watching him blurt out bizarre excuses the second he gets nervous. Before he can even attempt to apologize, Sunwoo flashes him a radiant, warm smile and casually drops a bombshell by telling him he's adorable. Blushing furiously, Jin-yong retreats into his own head to ponder if Jason's outlandish theories were actually correct. He vividly remembers their quiet bedroom conversation, dissecting why Sunwoo is the single female student on Earth who doesn't look like a floating boulder. Sipping tea in his fancy suit, Jason had delivered his ultimate conclusion with absolute certainty. The only reason Jin-yong can see Sunwoo's true face while everyone else looks like a chunk of granite is because he fell in love with her at first sight. Shifting gears to a hilarious bonus scene, Jin-yong restrains the chaotic Soo-kyung from behind to make her take responsibility for her earlier shin-shattering antics. However, Sunwoo eagerly steps up to deliver the disciplinary martial arts lesson herself. Sunwoo charges forward with maximum aggression and fires off a high-powered middle kick. But in true slapstick fashion, her leg completely bypasses Soo-kyung and lands square on Jin's instead, sending our innocent bystander flying back while questioning his horrible luck. We open on Jin-yong suffering through an absolute psychological nightmare. Sunwoo turns around with a cold, soul-crushing gaze, mercilessly informing him that a little basic human kindness doesn't mean she likes him. Before dropping the ultimate emotional anvil and calling him a pathetic loser, Jin-yong bolts upright in bed, drenched in cold sweat and hyperventilating like he just ran a marathon in his sleep. Sitting right beside him in matching blue polka dot pajamas and a nightcap is his imaginary best friend Jason, who immediately registers the sheer panic radiating from his buddy's face. As Jin-yong hangs his head in defeat, he confesses that this exact same nightmare has been haunting him repeatedly ever since they entertained the crazy theory about falling in love at first sight. Jason strokes his legendary mustache and gravely diagnoses the situation as textbook unrequited love trauma. Refusing to let his young pupil wallow in romantic despair, Jason drops some classic Sun Tzu tactical wisdom. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the outcome of 100 battles. Naturally, this inspiring speech comes complete with a majestic mental image of Jason cruising on a chopper. Fast forward to the school hallway, where pocket-sized Jason is now perched comfortably on Jin-yong's shoulder, like an overly jacked advice angel. Jin-yong realizes he actually knows next to nothing about Sunwoo, making a full-blown information-gathering mission their absolute top priority. Tracking down Class 2-5, our anxious hero slides open the door with trembling hands, trying his best not to lose his nerve. Inside, the room is filled with his usual perception of stone-faced background students. But the one girl he's actually looking for seems to be completely missing. As Jin-yong wonders if Sunwoo simply stepped out to the restroom, a booming voice cuts through his thoughts. He turns around to find an intimidating classmate named Im Jumin sternly informing him that he's standing right in his assigned seat, leaving Jin-yong momentarily stunned. Jin-yong quickly offers a polite apology and moves aside, while shoulder-mounted Jason instantly decides he despises this guy's entire vibe. Keeping his eyes on the prize, Jin-yong wastes no time asking Gyumin if he happens to know where Sunwoo went. Im Gyumin condescendingly informs Jin-yong that every now and then, some clueless greenhorn falls head over heels for a girl like Sunwoo. Stunned by the arrogant disrespect radiating from his classmate, Jin-yong's blood begins to boil as he questions what could possibly account for such a hostile tone. Inside Jin-yong's chaotic mind, his imaginary mentor Jason is already locked and loaded with a heavy machine gun. Jin-yong barely manages to restrain his imaginary friend's violent urges and tries asking where Sunwoo went, only for Gyumin to casually label her a trashy girl. Offended to his core, Jin-yong angrily demands that Gyumin keep Sunwoo's name out of his mouth and refrain from bad-mouthing her. Gyumin merely smirks with total indifference, dismissing our hero as another completely lost cause. Deeply annoyed by the defiance, Gyumin slowly gets up from his desk while adjusting his glasses. He grumbles about what a massive pain this has become and tells Jin-yong to stand up because he has something special waiting for him. Rather than initiating a conventional brawl, Jin-yong aggressively whips off his school blazer like a seasoned martial artist. He unleashes a barrage of high-velocity jacket, slaps directly onto Gyumin's exposed belly, sending the heavy classmate twisting and writhing in absolute theatrical agony. Sunwoo suddenly slides open the classroom door, wondering out loud why it sounds like a pig getting slaughtered inside. Jin-yong immediately stops his assault to proudly announce that he was giving Gyumin a beating for badmouthing her, to which Sunwoo cheerfully tells him to keep going. As Jin-yong demands to know why Gyumin harbored so much malice, Sunwoo clears the air with a surprising revelation. It turns out the two of them are actually longtime childhood friends, leaving Jin-yong completely flabbergasted by their unexpected relationship. Relocating their chat to a tranquil outdoor bench, Jin-yong humbly apologizes for whipping him with his jacket. Gyumin insists the blow didn't even hurt, while Jin-yong realizes this childhood connection is his golden ticket to carrying out Jason's strategy and gathering crucial intel on Sunwoo. Gyumin takes a serious tone and sternly advises him to abandon all romantic hope regarding Sunwoo. He cautions that while literal truckloads of desperate guys constantly pursue her, the grand total of successful suitors in her entire life remains at absolute zero. Jin-yong admits he already knew Sunwoo was famous given her massive social media following of over 2,000 people. Still, he stubbornly rationalizes that those failed suitors simply weren't her specific romantic type. A theory that Gyumin admits might actually be true. Gyumin clarifies that his stern warning isn't simply about Sunwoo's endless trail of failed suitors. Having grown up together since they were toddlers and attended the exact same schools, the two spent countless hours in each other's company. However, everything shifted drastically during middle school, when Gyumin witnessed a sudden and deeply disturbing change in her personality during what should have been a completely routine hallway interaction. When Gyumin casually called her a trashy woman and demanded she go buy him some bread, Sunwoo turned around with a terrifying pitch-black stare that chilled him to his very soul. Even though she maintained her usual gentle smile, Gyumin could sense an unexplainable, sinister aura beneath the surface that he admits still creeps him out to this very day. Back on the courtyard bench, Gyumin emphasizes that Sunwoo has been acting deeply unsettling ever since that day, which is why he firmly insists Jin-yong should just give up. As Jin-yong gazes up at the massive school building in complete bewilderment, he finds himself desperately wondering what kind of hidden red flags could possibly lie behind her friendly appearance. Strolling through the school hallways, Jin-yong decides to mentally write off the ominous story as nothing more than one classmate's subjective opinion. Because Sunwoo has only ever shown him pure warmth and kindness, our stubbornly optimistic hero resolves that there is absolutely no reason to abandon his intel-gathering mission over what might just be an exaggerated childhood grudge. Right on cue, Sunwoo's cheerful voice echoes through the corridor as she approaches alongside a female classmate. Noticing the two boys hanging out together so quickly, Sunwoo playfully inquires about what they've been up to, sending Jin-yong into an immediate sweat as he frantically tries to manufacture a believable lie so he won't reveal they were gossiping. Before Jin-yong can even think of a smooth cover story, Gyumin utterly destroys any chance of diplomacy by shouting at full volume that they were just talking trash about her. Jin-yong stands frozen in total horror, his jaw dropping as he realizes his new companion possesses zero tactical awareness, zero self-preservation, and an alarming urge to sabotage everything. Park Jin-yong and his talkative classmate Gyumin are abruptly stopped in the school hallway when Sunwoo and her friend stroll right up to them. Seeing the two guys whispering together, Sunwoo teasingly points out how quickly they seem to have become close buddies. While Jin-yong frantically tries to invent a believable cover story so he doesn't sound suspicious, his loud-mouthed companion instantly ruins everything by yelling that they were just trash-talk to her face. Hearing that shameless blurt sends our poor protagonist into an immediate soul-crushing panic attack. As Jin-yong internally questions what is wrong with his unfathomably stupid wingman, Sunwoo looks genuinely hurt and asks if he really badmouthed her behind her back. Terrified of ruining his standing with the only non-stone girl in existence, Jin-yong desperately attempts to deny the whole thing. Yellow Hoodie Girl finds the entire train wreck utterly hilarious, but Gyumin doubles down on his absolute betrayal. He aggressively insists that they were merely exposing Sunwoo's vile true nature to the world, completely obliterating whatever remaining dignity Jin-yong had left. Pushed far past his emotional breaking point, Jin-yong rips off his school blazer like a combat whip and begins violently thrashing his blabbing friend all the way down the corridor. He slaps the heavy guy mercilessly, refusing to stop until his honor is thoroughly avenged. Imaginary mercenary Jason approvingly notes that any further blabbering would have required lethal force. Meanwhile, Sunwoo and her companion decide it is best to simply ignore the two utter lunatics beating each other up, leaving the chaotic hallway behind as the school day finally ends. Walking out of the school gates at dusk, our gloomy hero broods over the nightmare unfolding around him. With zero actual progress made with Sunwoo and misunderstandings piling up higher than his homework, he mutters to himself that he ought to butcher his terrible wingman on the spot. Out of nowhere, Sunwoo pops up directly beside him with a mischievous grin, asking if he enjoyed talking trash behind her back. The sudden ambush sends Jin-yong into a flustered, blushing frenzy as he realizes how easily this girl manages to throw his composure into complete chaos. Before he can suffer a total brain short circuit, Sunwoo flashes a bright smile and giggles, admitting she knows he would never actually say mean things about her. She playfully smacks his back and blames Gyumin's usual antics, instantly melting away all of Jin-yong's anxiety. Claiming she conveniently ran out of bus fare once again, Sunwoo casually asks Jin-yong to walk her home. While he is thrilled to spend extra time with her, the thought of climbing that brutal uphill road immediately sends his spirit plummeting into deep despair. As the two set off down the street, imaginary tactical advisor Jason pops up to remind our hopeless romantic that full honesty about backstabbing is a terrible tactical mistake. Realizing the mercenary makes a shockingly solid point, Jin-yong agrees that keeping quiet about their hallway drama is definitely his best survival play. Groaning at the steep street stretching endlessly ahead, Sunwoo dramatically explains how her chronic anemia turns every single incline into a grueling physical endurance test. Hearing her complain about pounding headaches and severe breathlessness, our sympathetic hero can only offer his condolences while secretly dreading the upcoming trek up the mountain. Taking full advantage of her designated escort, Sunwoo casually asks Jin-yong to push her from behind, so she can actually survive the climb. Thoroughly flustered by the unexpected request for physical contact, our blushing protagonist stammers in embarrassment before very carefully resting his trembling hands right against her back. With Jin-yong powering her uphill like a human engine, Sunwoo giggles in relief before playfully complaining that his gentle hands actually tickle. She then shyly confesses that her back happens to be extremely sensitive to touch, instantly sending our poor hero's hyperactive inner brain into a full-blown emergency meltdown. Overwhelmed by her playful teasing, Jin-yong lets his hyperactive imagination completely take the driver's seat. He begins daydreaming about an idyllic romantic future, where they grow so comfortably close that he can heroically carry her up this steep slope on a cozy piggyback ride framed by glowing romance sparkles. Even imaginary mercenary Jason enthusiastically applauds the sugary sweet fantasy, but reality abruptly shatters when Sunwoo violently screams his name. Completely hypnotized by his delusional daydream, Jin-yong had been aggressively shoving her uphill at top speed, leaving the poor anemic girl gasping for oxygen in total physical exhaustion. Snapping back to reality, Jin-yong looks around and realizes they have accidentally reached a magnificent hilltop balcony overlooking the whole city. Admiring the sweeping urban view bathed in golden sunset light, he remarks on how open the scenery feels, marveling that Sunwoo gets to live near such a stunning location. To his complete surprise, Sunwoo admits she had zero idea this gorgeous overlook existed, dryly pointing out that chronic anemia patients rarely hike up to such heights. She playfully scolds him for nearly ending her life with his insane sprinting pace, forcing our panicked protagonist to bow his head in frantic apology. Softening her tone as the warm evening glow bathes the city below, Sunwoo turns back to Jin-yong with a gentle grin. Seeing how genuinely remorseful he looks, she decides to generously forgive his near-fatal cardio workout, admitting that showing her this hidden scenic view made the painful trek completely worth it. As a soft twilight breeze sweeps across the overlook, Sunwoo delicately tucks her dark hair behind her ear and quietly whispers how beautiful it is. Staring at her glowing face framed against the evening sky, Jin-yong stands utterly frozen, realizing that the view right in front of him is far more breathtaking than any city skyline. Standing on the serene hilltop balcony, Jin-yong suddenly remembers his talkative classmate Gyumin, mentioning that something about Sunwoo felt completely off. Gazing at her delicate silhouette bathed in the warm sunset glow, our overthinking hero ponders whether the reason she is the only non-stone girl in his world is directly connected to that mysterious feeling. Deciding that full transparency is his best tactical survival play, Jin-yong gathers his remaining courage to come clean. He calls out to Sunwoo and bluntly confesses that he really was discussing her with Gyumin behind her back, leaving the wide-eyed heroine thoroughly stunned as she turns around and asks if he genuinely trash-talked her for real. Desperately trying to repair the damage, Jin-yong stammers that after discovering Gyumin was her childhood friend, he simply wanted to learn a little more about her. Blushing furiously, while clutching the back of his neck in absolute embarrassment, our flustered protagonist begs her not to misinterpret his clumsy behavior, insisting he never said anything malicious behind her back. After a brief, suspenseful silence, Sunwoo breaks into a warm, radiant smile and light-heartedly dismisses his anxiety. Telling him there is absolutely no reason to stress over such minor details, she giggles that she has already forgotten the entire thing, cheerfully declaring that it is high time they start heading back down the steep hill. After confirming she can safely navigate the steep downhill walk home, Jin-yong receives a breezy reassurance before Sunwoo thanks him for the scenic escort and waves goodbye. As her silhouette disappears into the neighborhood below, our emotionally battered protagonist stands motionless on the pavement, completely drained from the intense emotional roller coaster. Right on schedule, imaginary tactical advisor Jason materializes out of thin air to offer some unsolicited romantic evaluation. Stroking his majestic mustache, the muscle-bound mercenary scolds Jin-yong for being overly transparent, wisely lecturing him that strategic silence is usually a far superior survival choice than dumping raw, unfiltered confessions directly onto his crush. While Jin-yong broods over her hidden feelings, Sunwoo walks home alone, lost in pleasant thoughts. Replaying his adorable, flustered admission that he just wanted to know more about her, she smiles warmly to herself as she walks down the street, genuinely charmed by how easily this awkward guy manages to throw her off guard. However, the cozy romantic aura instantly evaporates when Sunwoo's chronic anemia strikes back with full force. Exhausted from the extended journey, the poor girl dramatically collapses flat onto the sidewalk right outside a store, groaning in total physical defeat as she lies completely out of breath on the concrete floor. Finally, in a hilarious bonus peek into classroom life, Sunwoo brutally threatens to butcher Gyumin and turn him into kimchi stew after catching him eating bread straight out of her locker. Watching the duo bicker like angry siblings, Jin-yong comes to the hilarious realization that those two chaotic childhood friends really are thick as thieves. Back at school, Jin-yong gets a pep talk from his tiny, shoulder-mounted life coach Jason, who encourages him to get out on the soccer field and become a real man. Mid-stride, his shoelace comes undone, forcing our aspiring athlete to drop into a sudden kneeling crouch right in the middle of the hallway. Before he can finish tying his shoe, teacher Jo Hangyeol looms over him with a terrifying glare, shoving his head straight down to block his line of sight. She scolds him for staring up from such an unflattering angle, declaring that no girl wants to be viewed from below before casually strutting away. Completely unfazed by the verbal smackdown, Jin-yong perceives his stern teacher as just another literal slab of stone, satisfied that his mental defense mechanism spared him a beating. Driven by his crippling fear of rejection, he hid behind the stone rule while pouring all his lonely energy into obsessive self-improvement, studying hard and grinding at the gym. All that solo training pays off on the pitch as Jin-yong rockets a killer shot past the goalie, sending his delighted classmates into wild cheers. Over by the walkway, female students dreading the post-game sweat smell stop in their tracks when they spot Jin-yong out on the field, suddenly paying very close attention to his moves. Over by the bleachers, the female spectators are thoroughly captivated by Jin-yong's athletic display. They gush over his performance, chatting about how his quiet, distant demeanor only adds to his cool, mysterious charm on the pitch. Sunwoo's hoodie-wearing friend remains completely unimpressed by all the hype. She scoffs at the crowd's enthusiasm and openly questions how anyone could ever describe a quiet guy like Jin-yong as cool and sexy. Sunwoo chuckles to herself while biting her lollipop, recalling Jin-yong's hilarious past. She fondly remembers how he used to turn into a trembling, nervous wreck whenever he stood anywhere near her. As the soccer match comes to an end, Jin-yong's teammates enthusiastically cheer for him, crediting his killer goal for their big win. Dripping with sweat, Jin-yong excuses himself and heads straight over to the outdoor sinks to wash his face. While splashing water at the faucet, Jin-yong is suddenly confronted by Gyumin, the opposing goalie. Gyumin dramatizes his loss, complaining bitterly about how goalkeepers always take the full blame whenever the team loses. Gyumin's rant continues as he points out that even if he blocks 10 shots, missing just one makes everything his fault. He bluntly admits that failing to stop Jin-yong's shot pisses him off so much that he simply cannot stand him. Before Jin-yong's imaginary life coach Jason can chop Gyumin down with an axe, the disgruntled goalkeeper takes action. He cups water from the faucet and splashes it directly into Jin-yong's unprepared face. Shrieking from the ice-cold shock, Jin-yong retaliates instantly by squirting water back. The sink area explodes into a full-blown water war, with both four-eyed guys hurling petty insults and water jets at each other. Over on the walkway, Sunwoo and her friend hear the chaotic shouting and outrageous threats echoing across the yard. Intrigued by the sudden commotion, they stroll over to see what kind of weird mess the boys are getting into. Drenched to the bone from their petty splash war, Jin-yong fumes with rage over his ruined uniform. The out-of-shape goalie nonchalantly yanks off his own wet shirt to wring it out, casually telling his rival to stop crying over a little water. Refusing to be outdone, our hot-headed athlete angrily rips off his shirt as well, loudly promising a ruthless beatdown after school is over. Right at that chaotic moment, Sunwoo and her hoodie-wearing friend stroll over to investigate the noise, calling out to ask why the two boys are still lingering by the sinks when the class bell already rang. But as Jin-yong turns around to wipe his dripping face, he unwittingly unleashes his secret weapon. A sculpted, rock-hard set of abs forged from 5 years of obsessive solo grinding. The unexpected reveal hits the girls like a physical shockwave. Sunwoo and her previously skeptical friend freeze in their tracks, their faces flushing deep crimson as they stare in stunned awe at Jin-yong's ridiculously athletic physique. All previous jokes about his quiet introversion instantly evaporate, replaced by sheer, spellbound admiration for the unexpected heartthrob. Unfortunately for the opposing goalkeeper, the brutal contrast only makes things a whole lot worse. When the girls shift their eyes over to Gyumin standing proudly with his soft tummy exposed, their glowing admiration instantly turns into visible disgust. With their faces crumpled in second-hand embarrassment, the poor guy's ego gets utterly shattered in broad daylight. Sunwoo and her friend stroll over to the track field, wondering why the guys haven't headed inside for class yet despite the bell already ringing. But the second Jin-yong turns around shirtless to wipe away his sweat, revealing a surprisingly chiseled six-pack, both girls freeze in place as their eyes lock onto his impressive physique. Unfortunately, the romantic tension vanishes in a split second when Gyumin steps right next to him, also completely shirtless and glistening in all his glory. The girls' mesmerized expressions immediately turn to disgust, leading them to quickly walk away while openly regretting ever coming over to take a look. While Gyumin yells in outrage at their harsh rejection, Jin-yong suffers an absolute mental meltdown as the horrifying reality sinks in. Sunwoo just saw his bare chest. Overcome with utter embarrassment, Jin-yong immediately locks Gyumin in a ferocious chokehold, blaming his friend entirely for putting him in this mortifying scenario while their classmates watch them duel. As the two boys aggressively wrestle each other on the pavement over who bears the blame, Sunwoo pauses and turns back to glance over her shoulder with a subtle blush, clearly taking a lingering interest in Jin-yong. The next day during gym class, the boys head out to the soccer field to blow off some steam. Jin-yong aggressively charges the ball and unleashes a powerful rocket of a kick toward the net. But Gyumin somehow manages to absorb the entire hit with his stomach, leaving Jin-yong thoroughly dumbfounded by the save. As the surrounding crowd erupts over the unexpected block, Gyumin proudly soaks up the applause and smirks at Jin-yong, openly mocking him for shooting like total garbage today compared to yesterday. Unable to offer a single counter-argument, Jin-yong can only fume quietly under his breath as his terrible luck continues. Watching the match silently from the sidelines, Jin-yong's mustache-toting imaginary mentor Jason points out that his friend's physical and mental condition are completely out of sync today. Realizing he cannot focus on the game, Jin-yong admits defeat and decides to bench himself as the first half comes to a close. Exhausted and thoroughly defeated, Jin-yong slumps down on the concrete bleachers to rest, surrounded by the usual background of gray, stone-faced classmates. He lets out a heavy sigh of exhaustion, only to jump in surprise when a sudden voice speaks up right beside his ear. Jin-yong looks up and is instantly greeted by Sunwoo, leaning down with a bright, beautiful smile. Seeing her face in crisp, crystal-clear detail at such close range immediately sends his heart rate into overdrive, causing his internal circuits to completely short-circuit in sheer panic. Unable to handle the intense proximity, Jin-yong frantically scrambles down the steps and orders her to get down before anyone notices them together. Sunwoo is left standing there utterly confused, having no clue why he's acting as if they are currently under active enemy fire. Recalling his teacher's warning that looking up at people makes them look bad, our overthinking champion realizes why he freaked out when Sunwoo approached him on the bleachers. However, looking straight up at Sunwoo standing directly over him, he quickly realizes that the teacher's theory does not apply to her in the slightest. When Sunwoo asks why he's cowering, Jin-yong stammers out the strange advice about bad angles. Hearing this, Sunwoo leans right back in with a playful smirk, teasingly asking if she looks ugly to him. With zero filter left, Jin-yong blushes and blurts out that she looks pretty even from below. Sunwoo rests her cheek on her hand with a satisfied smile, quietly taking in the compliment. The moment the words leave his mouth, Jin-yong grips his head in sheer panic, realizing he just openly called his crush beautiful to her face. His mustache-toting imaginary mentor Jason appears in a void, pointing out that Jin-yong walked straight into her trap. When Jin-yong begs for emergency advice, Jason casually tells him to figure it out himself and vanishes. Knowing that trying to retract his smooth comment will only make things worse, Jin-yong sits in silence until Sunwoo breaks the tension with a warm smile, thanking him for the sweet compliment. Sunwoo cheerfully explains that compliments always feel great to hear, casually adding that she's heard other girls around school describing Jin-yong as cool and sexy. Jin-yong aggressively waves his hands in total denial, but Sunwoo sits back and murmurs that she doesn't think those girls are wrong at all. Stunned by her casual confession, Jin-yong's heart skips a beat as he turns to her and helplessly asks which part of him she actually finds attractive. Recalling his surprisingly chiseled six-pack from yesterday, Sunwoo leans all the way into his ear to whisper that he's attractive in a lot of ways, sending his internal circuits into complete meltdown. Jin-yong sits completely paralyzed with a glowing red face while Sunwoo gazes at him fondly. The intense romantic spell is only broken when a classmate runs up to call him back to the soccer field. Hearing his name called out across the noisy pitch, Jin-yong turns around in confusion to find Sunwoo sitting bright and eager on the bleachers, shouting enthusiastic cheers for him to bring home a victory. The sudden sight of his lovely cheerleader instantly freezes our romantic amateur in his tracks, leaving him standing completely motionless on the green grass, while his bewildered classmates scramble all around him to restart the intense game. Thoroughly perplexed by the sudden surge of adrenaline washing over him, Jin-yong turns to his imaginary mentor Jason to question what on earth is happening to his physical condition right now. Although he spent the entire first half stumbling around like a completely broken appliance, his legs suddenly feel impossibly light as he effortlessly takes control of the soccer ball and charges aggressively straight through the line of opposing defenders, appearing right on cue inside the mental void. Mustache Maestro Jason examines his pupil's physical condition with a knowing smirk, teasingly telling Jin-yong that he already understands the true answer deep down in his heart. Glancing over at the sunlit bleachers where Sunwoo sits attentively watching his every single move, Jason reveals that this miraculous surge of athletic power comes entirely from having his lovely crush watching him closely. Stroking his legendary facial hair thoughtfully, Jason admits he feels hesitant to walk back his signature stone-faced philosophy, but concedes that Jin-yong's wildly fluttering internal circuits might actually be a powerful hidden asset. Taking that mental validation to heart, Jin-yong aggressively charges the net and unleashes an absolute laser beam of a shot, leaving the helpless opposing goalkeeper diving through thin air as the ball rips into the net. As his ecstatic teammates swarm around him to celebrate the spectacular goal and officially crown him their match MVP, Jin-yong stands flustered by the roaring applause before breaking out into a pure, sweaty smile of genuine joy. Up on the bleachers, Sunwoo gleefully watches his triumphant celebration while casually ignoring Yuman's salty tears of outrage, softly whispering her sweet praise for Jin-yong with a blushing, incredibly radiant grin. Meanwhile, their sharp-eyed teacher strolls past the stone bleachers, catching a subtle glimpse of the adorable duo sitting side by side and reflecting on Jin-yong's amazingly smooth compliment from earlier. Seeing our overthinking champion practically radiating pure satisfaction from across the yard, she quietly chuckles to herself under her breath, highly amused by just how smugly happy the brat looks after pulling off a total victory right in front of Sunwoo. Our spectacled hero Jin-yong walks straight into a classic morning family drama. His parents are locked in an intense dining room debate over a pair of theater tickets, all because Dad suddenly got called into work over the weekend, leaving Mom furious and stuck with unused passes. When Mom asks if he's eaten, Jin-yong politely claims he will just grab a triangle gimbap on his way to school. Truth be told, he is actually starving, but sitting down for a meal with his terrifyingly silent father feels like walking through a minefield. Even his pocket-sized imaginary friend Jason lectures him on proper nutrient while slicing a fancy steak. Luckily, Mom solves the food debate by handing both theater tickets to Jin-yong, urging him to take a friend while Dad silently sulks over his canceled date night. Staring down at the pair of tickets, Jin-yong realizes he now faces a hurdle even bigger than breakfast: actually finding someone willing to go with him. Holding 2 golden passes, Jin-yong embarks on a quest to find a buddy, only to get rejected at every turn. One friend conveniently predicts he'll catch a cold that day, another has a turf war scheduled at Nemo High, and Yuman bluntly admits plays just aren't his thing. Assuming Yuman would rather watch anime anyway, Jin-yong accidentally insults him, only for Yuman to reveal he doesn't even watch anime before strolling off to the cafeteria. Left alone outside the school, Jin-yong reflects on his own terrible habit of making hasty assumptions. Miniature life coach Jason materializes on his shoulder, sagely noting that stereotypes are dangerous before cutting right to the chase. Since every single guy in school shot him down, Jason demands that Jin-yong finally be honest about who he truly wants to ask out. Jason calls him out point blank, exposing that Sunwoo is the only person on his mind. As the mysterious girl herself walks past them in the courtyard, the tiny mustache man warns Jin-yong that the moment has come to finally make a move. Before our overthinking hero can digest Jason's romantic ultimatum, teacher Hongyeol catches him completely off guard in the courtyard. He desperately tries to play off his loud monologue as simple daydreaming, but his sharp-eyed instructor isn't buying it. She casually asks if he's the type who invents imaginary friends to talk to in broad daylight, striking so dangerously close to the truth that Jin-yong nearly suffers a full-blown existential crisis right on the spot. Taking a seat on a nearby bench, Jin-yong hesitantly admits there is a girl he wants to invite to the theater. But before he can even hint at her identity, teacher Hangyeol casually drops Sunwoo's name, leaving our terrified hero wondering if she possesses actual mind-reading powers. She smirks and reveals her secret. She overheard him dropping cheesy flirtation lines on Sunwoo just yesterday. Being exposed in broad daylight sends Jin-yong into total internal collapse as he screams out in pure embarrassment. Shifting into actual advice mode, teacher Hangyeol asks if he is secretly terrified of getting turned down. Jin-yong timidly nods, embarrassed to admit his fear of failure. She points out that inviting a popular girl like Sunwoo to a play isn't just a casual hangout. It is practically equivalent to a romantic date request and full confession wrapped into one. Rather than letting him wallow in indecision, the teacher abruptly stands up, calls him a spineless loser, and decides to take extreme measures. She marches towards Sunwoo, smugly assuring him that he will thank her later. To Jin-yong's utter horror, teacher Hangyeol drops the nuclear bomb without hesitation. Right in front of Sunwoo and her friend, she loudly announces that Jin-yong wants to take Sunwoo to a play this weekend. While Sunwoo's giggling friend teases him for outsourcing his invitation to a teacher, Hangyeol casually walks away after telling them to talk it out. Sunwoo gives a cheerful wave and strolls right over to the petrified boy. As Jin-yong panics over being exposed, Sunwoo leans in close with a charming smile and flips the script completely. She directly asks if he wants to go with her, playfully bringing up the teacher's warning about it being a confession. Fast forward to the weekend, and our sharply dressed hero stands outside the station waiting for his date. Pocket-sized mentor Jason perches on his shoulder to marvel at how an awkward hallway intervention somehow birthed an actual weekend outing with the girl of his dreams. While waiting outside the station, Jin-yong frets over his date outfit and complains about his uncomfortable new contact lenses. Miniature mentor Jason reassures him that he looks plenty cool, but quickly shifts the focus away from fashion toward a much heavier question. Stepping into a serious mental realm, the muscular imaginary guide demands to know what kind of relationship Jin-yong truly wants to build with Sunwoo. He sternly warns our hero that he needs to clarify his intentions right here and now before going any further. Jason bluntly points out that Jin-yong clearly harbors romantic feelings for Sunwoo, and this theater date invitation has likely exposed those feelings to her. But while a normal person would embrace the moment, Jin-yong remains utterly paralyzed by his intense fear of getting rejected. Evoking dark memories of past heartbreaks and recurring nightmares, Jason warns that charging straight forward could easily lead to another painful rejection. He suggests that giving up on those romantic feelings right now might be the only sure way to protect himself from getting hurt again. When Jin-yong despairs that smothering existing feelings is easier said than done, a familiar realization suddenly strikes him. He remembers his ultimate defense mechanism from 5 years ago. If he simply forces himself to view Sunwoo as an unfeeling stone, his heart will stay completely safe. Just as Jin-yong contemplates putting his stone vision shield back up, Sunwoo arrives at the meeting spot, looking absolutely radiant in her casual weekend outfit. The sudden sight of her gorgeous smile shatters his overthinking mind and sends a bright blush surging across his face. With Jason promising to support him whether he chooses self-preservation or bravery, Jin-yong stands face-to-face with Sunwoo on the city street. The moment of truth has arrived, leaving our conflicted hero to decide if he will retreat behind his stone filter or take a leap of faith. Rejection is a painful reality that happens all too often when people open up about their feelings. That is precisely why Jason gave young Jin-yong his legendary advice: treat every girl like a stone. By turning everyone into inanimate rocks, he effectively shuts down any budding affection before heartbreak can occur. Walking through school corridors lined with literal boulders, kept our protagonist safe and comfortable for years. However, beneath this absurd stone vision lies a child deeply afraid of getting turned down. His odd defense mechanism is simply a fortress built to protect a heart scarred by past abandonment. Fast forward to the present, where Sunwoo teases our brooding hero for sipping a bitter espresso like a mature adult. Little does she know, he only ordered it because it was the cheapest item available. As Sunwoo bubbles over with excitement for her very first theater play, he remains lost in thought. Jin-yong realizes that viewing Sunwoo as just another stone would guarantee safety from romantic rejection. Yet getting genuinely closer to her demands that he confront his deeply ingrained trauma. Sitting alone with his drink, he worries whether he truly has what it takes to tear down his emotional walls. After relying on his stone defense for so long, letting someone in feels like an impossible obstacle. Sensing his distant gaze, Sunwoo snaps him back to reality and immediately sees through his weak excuse about bad coffee. She playfully calls him a liar for letting his mind wander right in front of her. After teasing him for not ordering a sweet choco latte, Sunwoo reveals the immense effort behind their date. She spent 2 full hours painstakingly doing her makeup and selecting her outfit at home, ensuring she looked her absolute best before stepping out to meet him at the cafe. Reminding him of her huge effort for their hangout, Sunwoo playfully commands him to keep his eyes strictly on her. Realizing how rude his internal panic has been, a humbled Jin-yong accepts her scolding. With a smile, she forgives him, and the pair stands up to head over to the play. Determined not to ruin the day, Jin-yong decides to table his existential stone crisis for now and focus entirely on enjoying his time with Sunwoo. He resolves to put off any big heavy decisions about his emotional walls until after their date is over. The two head into the theater for her very first play, where a delightfully bizarre Shakespearean comedy unfolds on stage. The lead actor completely ruins the dramatic romantic mood with his hilarious deadpan dialogue, turning what should have been a tragic masterpiece into pure theatrical chaos. After Sunwoo snoozes right through the performance, they head over to the local arcade to blow off some steam. Our broody protagonist promptly burns through 20,001, failing miserably at a simple claw machine, while his cheerful date practically loses her mind laughing at his complete lack of arcade skills. From embarrassingly off-key karaoke serenades that would make a rock cringe to sharing a warm dinner where she cutely cuts up his food, the rest of their evening turns into an unexpectedly perfect hangout. For once, our hero actually forgets all his absurd stone rules. As night settles over the city, the pair strolls side by side along the peaceful street, chatting comfortably as he walks her all the way back to her apartment. The atmosphere between them feels easier and more natural than it ever has before. Arriving outside her building, Sunwoo warmly thanks him for escorting her home and sweetly bids him goodnight with a bright, satisfied smile. But just as she turns to walk away, she notices him standing completely frozen on the pavement behind her. Noticing his visibly hesitant expression and fidgeting hands, she pauses in her tracks and turns back, asking if he has something important left on his mind. Caught completely off guard, our overly anxious hero immediately begins sweating bullets under her direct gaze. Deep down, Jin-yong desperately longs to confess how much fun he had and ask her out on a proper second date just for the two of them. Yet when the moment arrives, his courage completely crumbles and he panics, blurting out a horribly stiff "see you at school" instead before trying to laugh it off. Relieved but amused by his total awkwardness, Sunwoo gives him a playful punch for making her nervous over such a mundane farewell. With a final wave and a chuckle, she turns around and happily trots off into her apartment complex, leaving him alone. Walking away into the night, a heavy wave of reality crashes over our brooding protagonist. Even though he genuinely wanted to open up, the suffocating fear of romantic rejection still completely paralyzes him, haunted by the painful imaginary image of Sunwoo awkwardly shooting down his real feelings. He quickly retreats back into his shell, convincing himself that keeping his emotional distance is the safest choice. To justify his cowardice, he rationalizes that teacher Hongyeol forced this entire date onto her, convincing himself that Sunwoo probably never wanted to hang out with him in the first place. Just as our brooding hero resolves to train his brain into viewing Sunwoo as just another lifeless stone, a sudden voice cuts right through his heavy inner monologue, shattering his gloomy solitude before he can retreat into his shell. Sunwoo turns back with a plum grin and casually reminds him to order something other than a bitter espresso next time, suggesting he try a sweet choco latte instead. Hearing her drop the casual promise of a next time leaves our overly anxious protagonist completely frozen in place, utterly stunned that she actually enjoyed herself enough to want to hang out all over again. Plunging deep into his own dark mindscape, Jin-yong comes face to face with his legendary mustache mentor Jason, who sits him down for a brutally honest intervention about his endless habit of running away. Jason refuses to sugarcoat the situation, calling out how pathetic it was to rely on someone else to set up his date, only to spend the entire evening wallowing in self-doubt. He ruthlessly recaps Jin-yong's entire night, from getting caught daydreaming at the cafe and letting Sunwoo cut his food, to choking on his goodbye and retreating back behind his absurd stone defense. When Jason unapologetically labels his cowardice as textbook loser behavior, our brooding hero finally reaches his breaking point, forced to confront the harsh reality of his own self-sabotage. Snapping out of his spiraling self-pity, Jin-yong suddenly lunges forward and grabs both of Sunwoo's hands, locking eyes with her and leaving the poor girl completely stunned by his sudden burst of bold affection. Flustered and red-faced, he stammers an earnest apology for taking her to such a snooze-worthy play, boldly promising to make it up to her with an infinitely better second date. Instead of rejecting him, Sunwoo breaks into a bright, joyful laugh. She playfully admits she was wondering when he would finally work up the courage to say that proving his fear of rejection was totally unwarranted. Their evening ends on a wonderfully sweet note outside her apartment. Deeply apologetic for dragging Woo to a play that was boring enough to put her to sleep, Jin-yong promises to pick something far more exciting for their next date, which earns him a sweet laugh of relief. Sunwoo teasingly reveals she was waiting for him to suggest another outing. With the confession out in the open, the two stand together in a tender, comfortable silence beneath the evening streetlights. Suddenly realizing he's been holding her hands the entire time, Jin-yong jumps back in absolute panic. But Sunwoo just giggles, cheerfully telling him she is looking forward to whatever fun plan he brings next. After saying their goodbyes, Jin-yong clutches his racing heart in disbelief, while Sunwoo walks home staring gently at her own hand with a warm, affectionate smile. Bright and early the next morning, our resident overthinker hits the outdoor workout park to sweat out his inner turmoil, doing pull-ups while his tiny imaginary coach, Jason perched on his shoulder, counts every single rep. Having promised Sunwoo a second date, Jin-yong vows to overcome his crippling fear of rejection. Pocket-sized Jason thoroughly approves of this manly decision, though Jin-yong still has zero clue how to actually approach her. Catching his breath after finishing 3 grueling sets, Jin-yong mutters to himself about his joints hurting during pull-ups, only to get an unexpectedly brutal response from behind. Spooked out of his mind by a sudden insult, Jin-yong turns to find Sunwoo's friend Soo-kyung standing there in pink bunny pajama pants, brightly greeting him with a mischievous grin. As soon as Jin-yong registers who she is, his brain automatically converts Soo-kyung into a familiar, friendly-looking stone head, maintaining his classic rock vision filter for anyone who isn't Sunwoo. Soo-kyung suddenly demands that Jin-yong repeat the exact pull-up form he was just doing right before her eyes. Confused but obedient, our resident workout rookie hops right back onto the bar to demonstrate his pull-up technique, only for his pink-clad observer to unleash a splitting screech of total horror at the sheer atrocity of what she is witnessing. Before Jin-yong can even process what went wrong, Soo-kyung flies through the park air with a ferocious dropkick straight into his chest, screaming in fury at who on earth taught him to exercise like that. Left clutching his aching head while rolling helplessly around in the grass, our poor protagonist can only groan in absolute confusion. Standing tall over her battered victim, The self-appointed fitness authority sternly warns him that exercising with such atrocious technique is going to completely wreck his joints for life. She commands him to wait right there while she goes home to change into proper clothes, shutting down his feeble excuses with a terrifying glare that forces his immediate submission. Left sitting bewildered on the pavement, Jin-yong is suddenly joined by tiny tactical advisor Jason, who materializes on his shoulder with an intense spark in his eye. The pocket-sized life coach pensively strokes his epic mustache, dramatically declaring that this chaotic morning encounter is actually a goldmine of strategic opportunity for Jin-yong's ongoing romantic mission. Invoking Sun Tzu's timeless art of war, Jason reminds Jin-yong that gathering key intelligence from Sunwoo's closest friend will be infinitely superior to the useless advice they got from their classmate back in high school. Since their main goal has now officially shifted toward getting closer to Sunwoo, casually probing Sooki-young for insider information is clearly their smartest tactical move forward. A short while later, Sooki-young struttingly returns to the outdoor gym, wearing what appears to be the exact same oversized pink hoodie. When an oblivious Jin-yong stupidly asks what on earth she actually went home to change, he gets slammed with an immediate verbal beatdown as she furiously points down at her freshly swapped athletic pants and sleek black sneakers. Digging an even deeper grave for himself, Jin-yong foolishly stammers out that everyone besides Sunwoo still looks like a giant floating stone head to him, barely escaping with his life after triggering her deadly rage. With her temper barely kept in check, Sooki-young orders him to grab onto the bar once again so she can personally overhaul his disastrous exercise technique. Taking full advantage of their private coaching session, Jin-yong nervously asks if she happens to be close friends with Sunwoo. But the razor-sharp friend instantly connects the dots, cutting right through his subtle setup to demand if he has a massive crush on Sunwoo, leaving our hopeless overthinker completely exposed and panicking uncontrollably on the spot. With sweat pouring down his face as he stammers out a pathetic denial, Jin-yong is mercilessly mocked by Sooki-young, who scoffs that his romantic feelings are so painfully obvious, even a passing chicken could tell. And right on cue, an escaped rooster standing on the walkway vigorously nods its head in agreement, leaving both of them staring in total disbelief at the barnyard expert. Setting the bizarre chicken situation aside, Sooki-young shifts back to a surprisingly serious tone, warning Jin-yong that winning Sunwoo's heart is not going to be a walk in the park. As she prepares to reveal the critical catch beyond her popularity, our anxious protagonist holds his breath in intense anticipation, waiting to hear the daunting obstacle standing between him and his target. Opening up about her best friend, Sooki-young explains to Jin-yong that Sunwoo is a complete mystery to everyone around her. On the surface, Sunwoo is incredibly bright, sociable, and friendly with all of their classmates at school. Yet despite spending more time around her than anyone else, Sooki-young admits she still has no clue what is really going on inside her head. She notes that no matter how much they chat or joke around, Sunwoo almost never opens up about personal matters, giving off the distinct vibe of someone guarding deep secrets. Even so, proud of her status as Sunwoo's closest companion, Sooki-young cheerfully taunts our hopeful romantic, gleefully predicting that trying to win Sunwoo's heart will only drag him through some rough emotional suffering. This heavy warning leaves our resident overthinker deeply bewildered, as he remembers another classmate describing Sunwoo in the exact same mysterious way. Jin-yong mutters to himself that he has never noticed anything strange like that about her at all. But before he can ponder her secrets any further, Sooki impatiently barks at him to stop idling and hurry up with his pull-ups. When he hesitates for a single moment, Sooki-young flies through the air with a brutal kick to force his immediate compliance. Rubbing his head while trying to recover, Jin-yong defensively questions why she is suddenly bossing him around, asking if she is even good at exercising. After all, since she still looks like a giant head to him, he has zero idea whether she is actually fit. Taking his skepticism as a personal insult, Sooki-young smirks and dramatically slips off her hoodie to reveal a sleek black sports bra underneath. Striking a dazzling fitness pose in her athletic wear, the self-appointed workout coach proudly boasts about her fitness skills, cheekily telling Jin-yong to do his absolute best not to fall head over heels in love with her right then and there. Unfortunately for her vanity, Jin-yong's rock vision filter remains entirely invincible, staring with a completely blank expression at what his mind renders as a literal gray boulder carved into a body wearing gym gear. Our clueless protagonist dryly admits that she does indeed look remarkably solid, bringing their chaotic morning workout in the outdoor park to a hilarious close. Suki-young dramatically slides off her hoodie to reveal her sleek athletic gear, proudly boasting that she is super confident when it comes to working out while warning Jin-yong not to go falling for her. Our glasses-wearing protagonist can only stand there in absolute silence as his brain attempts to process the sudden flex. Thanks to Jin-yong's unrelenting rock filter vision, her boastful pose instantly turns her into a literal block of carved granite in his mind. Without missing a single beat, he deadpans that she does indeed look extraordinarily solid, which she naturally takes as a high-tier compliment. Meanwhile, on a quiet walking trail nearby, Sunwoo strolls along carrying a fresh bag of groceries when she suddenly spots two of her high school classmates heading in her direction. They are deep in conversation, arguing about whether their physical education teacher is actually handsome or just looking good for his age. Eager to avoid an awkward social encounter outside of school, Sunwoo yanks her baseball cap down over her eyes and slinks right past them completely unrecognized. She lets out a heavy, dramatic sigh of relief once the coast is clear, thoroughly satisfied with her stealth tactics. Her peaceful walk is abruptly interrupted by sharp shouting nearby, where Suki-young is running an uncompromising outdoor boot camp. She fiercely commands Jin-yong to pull his back in and stop using momentum, demanding 3 more pull-ups while the poor guy practically begs for mercy. While Sunwoo watches the chaotic training session with an amused smile from a distance, Suki-young completely loses her patience over Jin-yong's atrocious form. Deciding that watching his struggle is physically painful, she straight up kicks him away from the pull-up bar so she can take over. Grabbing the bar with perfect posture, Suki-young flexes her back muscles and cranks out effortless pull-ups without breaking a sweat. She smugly asks if basic exercises are really that difficult for him, leaving Jin-yong whining about how her demonstration was no different from his attempt. While Jin-yong rubs his head in utter disbelief at her ridiculous strength, Sunwoo steps into full view and loudly calls out how cool Suki-young looks. The sudden praise catches both workout buddies completely off guard, leaving them staring in shock at who just arrived. Recognizing her friend right away, Suki-young dashes over with open arms and enthusiastic shouts, abandoning her workout on the spot. Meanwhile, Jin-yong stands there sweating bullets, thoroughly bewildered by how his private pull-up torture session suddenly transformed into a surprise social gathering. Suki-young explains to Sunwoo that she was merely stepping in to fix Jin-yong's terrible pull-up technique, while a random, majestic rooster casually struts past them on the park path. Sunwoo can only stare in utter confusion, completely bewildered by the sudden appearance of farm wildlife in the middle of their workout spot. After Jin-yong offers a painfully awkward wave hello, Sunwoo decides to give the exercise bar a try herself, only to immediately complain about how tough it is just to hang there. When Jin-yong deadpans that her struggle is probably just her anemia acting up, Sunwoo gets rightfully offended at his complete lack of tact. Refusing to let her friend get out of exercise so easily, Suki-young enthusiastically offers to lend a hand and boost Sunwoo up. She immediately assigns Jin-yong to stand directly in front of the rig to act as the official rep counter, which our protagonist obediently agrees to do without realizing the chaos waiting for him. Suki-young grabs Sunwoo around the waist to assist her form, gently instructing her not to be scared and to pull herself up nice and slow. But even with a certified fitness enthusiast physically supporting her weight from behind, Sunwoo quickly realizes that pull-ups are far more brutal than she ever anticipated. As Sunwoo hangs suspended from the bar, her eyes suddenly lock onto Jin-yong standing directly in front of her. Finding herself staring right into his face at point-blank range, her heart goes into absolute overdrive, causing her to flush bright red and completely freeze up mid-rep in utter embarrassment. Soo-young pushes against her lower back, shouting for her to stop dawdling and pull herself up already. Sunwoo desperately tries to focus and grunts through the physical effort, but the moment she reaches the top of the bar, she catches Jin-yong staring at her again, completely shattering what little concentration she had left. While Sunwoo panics under his gaze, our glasses-wearing protagonist isn't even paying attention to her form. He's secretly pondering why on earth there's a stray chicken wandering around the park. Completely flustered by his intense staring, Sunwoo's sweaty hands lose their grip on the metal bar, causing her to slip backwards. With a sudden scream, Sunwoo tumbles off the bar and crashes directly on top of Soo-young in a catastrophic pileup. Jin-yong casually strolls over to inspect the carnage, staring down at the tangled pair on the ground and asking with genuine confusion why they're suddenly lounging on the pavement. Without an ounce of empathy, Jin-yong smugly insists this disaster only proves his earlier point about her anemia, earning an immediate shutdown from Sunwoo as she scrambles off Soo-young to check if her fitness coach is still alive after taking the full impact. Lying flat on her back, Soo-young realizes Sunwoo was distracted by romance while Jin-yong completely abandoned his counting duties. Dark wrath takes over as she snaps, hoisting Sunwoo high into the air like a heavy barbell while threatening to eliminate both of them for ruining her training session. Sunwoo's desperate screams of apology echo across the entire neighborhood as Soo-young doles out her terrifying physical punishment. Once the chaotic workout regime finally wraps up, Sunwoo and Jin-yong walk home together side by side under the warm orange light of sunset, thoroughly exhausted from the afternoon's madness. After surviving Soo-young's merciless outdoor boot camp, Jin-yong walks home alongside Sunwoo, dramatically sighing about how exhausting the workout was, even though Sunwoo dryly points out he barely did anything at all. As Sunwoo happily mentions learning from Soo-young again, Jin-yong reflects on his grand strategy. Although his plan to analyze her like an enemy proved to be a total failure, our glasses-wearing protagonist secretly admits exercising together was actually fun, earning an enthusiastic thumbs up from his imaginary advisor, Jason. Reaching the sidewalk crosswalk where their paths split, Jin-yong casually waves goodbye and promises to see her at school tomorrow. But just as he turns to head down his street, Sunwoo hesitates with a quiet gasp, halting him right in his tracks. Our completely clueless protagonist pauses and turns around, staring back with an innocent question mark over his head while waiting for her to spit out whatever is suddenly on her mind. Recalling the earlier sight of Jin-yong attempting pull-ups under Soo-young's intense coaching, Sunwoo nervously shifts her bag of groceries and flushes bright red under the warm orange sunset. Summoning every ounce of her courage while clutching her arm, she timidly looks up and asks if he happens to like people who are good at sports. Jin-yong's brain goes into an instant lockup as he processes her unexpected question. Exhibiting the romantic awareness of a literal block of concrete, he casually replies that he supposes it's nice if someone is generally healthy, before asking why she's brought it up. An agonizing silence descends as Sunwoo's instantly deflates, her subtle romantic setup utterly crushed by his clueless reaction. Desperately trying to cover up her massive disappointment, Sunwoo forces a quick, strained laugh, claims she was just curious, and hastily flees down the sidewalk after a hurried wave goodbye. Left standing all by himself, Jin-yong mutters in utter confusion about what just occurred, prompting Jason to instantly pop up on his shoulder with a heavy, soul-crushing facepalm. The mustache-toting imaginary friend dramatically sighs, admitting that while a woman's heart is a mystery, something went terribly wrong. Jason pulls no punches, bluntly informing his protégé that he just delivered the absolute worst possible answer imaginable. As Jin-yong trudges across the pedestrian crosswalk, desperately begging for an explanation, Jason stubbornly refuses to spell it out. Instead, the imaginary advisor openly roasts the poor guy for making monumentally terrible decisions every single time a crucial romantic opportunity presents itself. In a hilarious bonus scene, Sunwoo's already chaotic evening takes another absurd turn back at her apartment courtyard. Screaming in absolute terror, she leaps into the air upon realizing that the stray neighborhood rooster from the exercise park has somehow tracked her down and followed her all the way home. Our story picks up late at night on the school rooftop, where hoodie-clad Soo-young goes to catch a breath of fresh air. Assuming she has the entire top floor to herself past 9 p.m., her quiet night takes a turn when melodious tunes start wafting up from the music room. Her goosebumps aren't from cold air, but pure awe at how insanely good the musician sounds. However, back in the hallway, her tale leaves the heavy-set classmate thoroughly chilled, while Jin-yong questions why a simple piano melody is being told like a terrifying ghost story. When Soo-young wonders who could possibly possess such incredible talent, the big guy steps up to deliver some eerie school folklore. He introduces the legendary ghost of the music room, recalling a passionate student who spent every single evening practicing late on the grand piano. According to him, the girl's tragic end came not from an evil spirit, but choking on hard candy right at the keyboard. Now, her phantom spirit allegedly continues her nighttime recitals, leading him to claim that Soo-young unknowingly witnessed a full-blown ghostly concert. While Jin-yong scoffs at what he considers a ridiculously sloppy legend, he notices Sunwoo clutching her chest in genuine fright. Seeing her tremble at such a goofy tale, our observant hero realizes that behind Sunwoo's composed exterior lies a surprisingly timid girl who hates scary stories. Before the horror discussion escalates, teacher Hang-yeol interrupts to enlist Jin-yong and Sunwoo for faculty office duty. As the pair heads off together, Soo-young corners the resident storyteller to ask if that ghost story was an actual legend floating around their school. With a smug grin, the big guy confesses he completely fabricated the story on the spot just to freak everyone out. Delighted that Sunwoo actually fell for his trick, he wanders away cackling, leaving a bewildered Soo-young to marvel at his sheer audacity. Walking back together after helping teacher Hang-yeol grade papers, Jin-yong notices Sunwoo trembling like a leaf beside him. Sensing her distress, he turns to check if she's all right, only for Sunwoo to frantically play it off with an overly nervous laugh. When Jin-yong asks if the fake ghost story scared her, Sunwoo aggressively jabs his chest while insisting ghosts do not exist. Yet despite her defiant speech about not fearing candy-choking spirits, her knees continue knocking together in pure terror. Right on cue, mysterious piano notes begin echoing down the deserted hallway from the music room. Jin-yong tries to rationalize the sudden performance, but a horrified Sunwoo becomes convinced the legend has officially come to life. Before Jin-yong can explain that a late-staying student is probably practicing, a dark, shadowy figure materializes in the distance. The sinister silhouette glides forward with glowing white eyes, sending colder chills down their spines. As the terrifying figure approaches them, Sunwoo loses her remaining composure and lets out a blood-curdling scream. Panicking completely, she turns on her heel and bolts up the staircase to escape the supposed candy ghost. Jin-yong desperately yells after her to run downstairs toward the exit instead of trapping herself on the upper floor. Meanwhile, the spooky apparition watches them flee in absolute silence. As it turns out, the frightening ghost is actually teacher Hang-yeol taking a break. Blindsided by their sudden sprint, she pouts in utter disappointment over being mistaken for a terrifying phantom. Chasing her up to the rooftop, Jin-yong bursts through the doors only to find Sunwoo collapsed flat on her back. Exhausted from sprinting up the stairs with her anemia, she gasps for air while blaming the steep steps for her downfall. Sunwoo insists the shadowy figure in the hallway was definitely a real monster, but Jin-yong points out it was probably just an ordinary person hidden by darkness. Before they can debate further, those mysterious piano melodies echo across the school once again. Jin-yong wonders who could possibly be playing music at such a late hour, noting that this is exactly how ghost stories get started. Seeing Sunwoo shivering in complete panic, our hero realizes he urgently needs a plan to calm her down. Right on cue, his trusty imaginary counselor Jason manifests in a dramatic vampire cape to declare this horror situation a massive romantic win. He insists that a terrified girl seeking comfort is the perfect setup to bring them closer together. Before Jin-yong can process the advice, Sunwoo's trembling hand reaches out and desperately grabs hold of his arm. Whimpering in fear, our timid beauty clings to him like a lifeline, seeking shelter from the phantom piano notes. Jin-yong's face instantly explodes into a bright red blush as he stands completely frozen by her touch. With Sunwoo leaning against him on the dimly lit rooftop, the famous suspension bridge effect takes full control of the night. Out of nowhere on the dark school roof, Jin-yong is startled out of his wits when Sunwoo suddenly leans in close, trembling as she whispers about how terrified she is of the creepy noise echoing through the night air. Facing her face-to-face under the city lights, our stone-obsessed protagonist feels his heart race and his nervous system instantly go into overdrive. Sunwoo tightly clutches his blazer sleeve in pure panic, desperately seeking protection from whatever spooky phantom is lurking nearby. Standing completely frozen in disbelief, Jin-yong struggles to process the sheer intensity of intimate physical contact with a female student who actually looks like a human being instead of a cold lump of granite. Jin-yong desperately tries to keep his composure by digging deep into his high school psychology knowledge. He remembers the famous suspension bridge effect, where shared danger supposedly tricks the brain into feeling intense romantic attraction. Picturing a couple holding hands while crossing a rickety mountain rope bridge over a scary chasm, he realizes this eerie situation might just be his ultimate shortcut to winning her heart. Unfortunately, his master plan for a dramatic rooftop romance instantly crumbles when the mysterious phantom starts pounding out a ridiculously cheerful piano tune. Instead of trembling in fear, Sunwoo completely relaxes and giggles in delight, openly praising the ghost's impressive musical talent while Jin-yong awkwardly laughs along, trying to cover up his own utter embarrassment. Sunwoo easily identifies the upbeat tune as a classic waltz in 3/4 rhythm, casually revealing that she used to take ballroom dance lessons when she was little. Jin-yong listens in utter fascination as she talks about a world of formal dance that sounds completely unfamiliar and foreign to his uncultured ears. A hilarious flashback reveals that she and Ji-yumin were childhood dance partners who spent every single lesson throwing massive tantrums and demanding new partners from their exhausted teacher. She eventually traded dance slippers for sketchbooks in art class, quitting ballroom dancing altogether due to her ongoing struggle with anemia. Sunwoo cheerfully drops the bombshell that Jimin was actually a certified dancing prodigy back in kindergarten, sending Jin-yong directly into an existential crisis. He stands there completely bewildered, trying and utterly failing to picture his heavily built, mob boss-looking buddy executing graceful, feather-light pirouettes across a polished ballroom floor. When Jin-yong admits that ballroom dancing sounds like a fascinating world he knows nothing about, Sunwoo gets a bright idea. Reasoning that their friendly rooftop ghost is providing the ultimate live musical accompaniment, she flashes a radiant smile and suggests they take advantage of the spooky piano performance for an impromptu dancing lesson. Completely taken aback, Jin-yong stammers in confusion when Sunwoo suddenly asks for his hand. After a few seconds of panicky hesitation, he reluctantly stretches out his arm, and she delicately clasps his hand, guiding his clumsy fingers into the proper basic dance position while the phantom musician continues playing in the background. The mood goes from sweet romance to absolute carnage on the very first step, when Jin-yong's complete lack of rhythm causes him to stomp full weight onto Sunwoo's foot in her open-toed slides. She collapses onto the floor, clutching her crushed toes with a muffled curse while our mortified lead panics and frantically begs for forgiveness. As Sunwoo winces on the ground, Jin-yong frantically rambles that his legs are still traumatized from Suki-young's earlier low kick. Amazingly, Sunwoo proves to be a saintly instructor, pulling him back up for a retry and telling him to spin, only for Jin-yong to immediately contort himself into an incredibly awkward human pretzel. Just when it looks like Jin-yong might actually pull off a suave romantic maneuver, his absolute betrayal of basic footwork catches up to him. He slips clumsily in his rubber sandals and slams flat onto the rooftop deck like a sack of flour. Showing the patience of a saint, Sunwoo brushes off his horrific clumsiness and offers him one more shot at redemption. But before he can even celebrate his second chance, her sweet demeanor flips into a chilling murder glare as she warns that if he steps on her toes again, she'll personally break his foot in return. Determined to avoid a painful trip to the emergency room, Jin-yong drops down onto one knee like a chivalrous knight, requesting a royal dance at court. Offering his hand with utmost sincerity, he politely asks her to guide him through the steps, eager to prove he can follow her lead. This unexpected gentlemanly proposal takes Sunwoo completely by surprise, instantly melting her terrifying threat. A radiant, genuine smile returns to her face as she warmly accepts his invitation, placing her delicate hand in his to resume their midnight dance lesson. As the phantom pianist continues pounding out an upbeat tune in the darkness, imaginary Jason pops into existence, dressed like a suave vampire, sipping fine red wine. He dramatically explains that this eerie midnight melody was originally a horrifying school ghost story that kept students shivering in terror every single night. However, for Jin-yong and Sunwoo, that eerie haunting has unexpectedly transformed into a wonderful romantic gift. Framed by the glittering city lights, the duo spins together in a breathtakingly sweet ballroom moment under the quiet night sky. After their magical rooftop dance session wraps up, the two walk out of the main school building into the cool evening air. Taking advantage of the quiet atmosphere, Jin-yong asks if she's still practicing her art, and Sunwoo happily confirms that she never stopped drawing. Never one to miss an opportunity, Jin-yong bashfully asks if she could draw a portrait of a muscular bearded macho man for him, promising to pay her back for the favor. Though clearly bewildered by his strangely specific request, Sunwoo sweetly promises to give it a shot. As they continue walking side by side through the school courtyard, Jin-yong silently marvels at learning something new about her artistic passion. At the same time, a faint spark ignites in his own mind, subtly reminding him of personal creative goals he had long buried deep inside. Their calm stroll comes to a sudden halt when Sunwoo excuses herself to head back inside the facility to use the restroom. She cheerfully waves goodbye and trots straight toward the dark building entrance, assuring a bewildered Jin-yong that she will be right back in just a minute. Jin-yong stands frozen in total confusion as she disappears into the shadows. He can't help but notice the massive contradiction, wondering how a girl who was trembling in sheer terror over creepy noises 5 minutes ago is now casually strolling into a pitch-black building all by herself without a care in the world, perched on his shoulder like a tiny master detective. Mini Jason strokes his mustache and declares the entire situation deeply suspicious. He reminds Jin-yong of their original suspension bridge effect plan, floating a wild theory that the fear tactic was actually in motion all along. Sure enough, inside the dimly lit bathroom, Sunwoo stands before the mirror calmly applying lip balm with a knowing smile, completely dropping her terrified act. Standing right in front of the bathroom mirror, Sunwoo chuckles slyly while applying her lip balm, completely shattering Jin-yong's romantic fantasy. She openly scoffs at the ridiculous idea of haunted school buildings, revealing her terrified damsel in distress routine was just a clever ploy to get physically close to him. Still, as she finishes freshening up, our scheming artist mutters with a smile that his clumsy stomp on her toes actually hurt like crazy. Meanwhile, down in the school's actual music room, the mystery behind the midnight rooftop waltz is officially solved. A sharp-looking teacher named Hangyeol slides open the door to interrupt the private concert, sternly reminding her dedicated student that it has gotten way too late, and ordering her to pack up her music books and head straight home. Sitting at the grand piano, a quiet pink-haired student named Yojin turns around with a sad sigh. She sits slumped on her bench, looking utterly defeated, clearly disappointed that her secret rooftop accompaniment has been cut short right in the middle of her practice session. Yojin timidly mumbles a soft plea to teacher Hangyeol, desperately asking if she can play just one last song before leaving. But since her bashful whisper barely makes a sound, the exhausted teacher fails to hear a thing, ushering the apologetic young musician out the door as the quiet school camp settles into complete darkness for the night. Our story kicks off inside classroom 25, where Sunwoo ponders the ultimate high school dilemma of staying friendly with everyone while carefully maintaining her personal space. She effortlessly handles her classmates' questions with a polite smile, claiming she isn't directly involved in anyone else's business. Deep down, our resident queen of social grace is just trying to navigate the daily hallway politics without getting pulled into unnecessary drama. Back at her desk, Sunwoo stares blankly at her empty sketchbook as a recent memory comes rushing back. Park Jin-yong, the guy who perceives every girl around him as literal inanimate geology, requested a drawing of a muscular macho guy with a mustache, promising to pay her back. Realizing that request is about as impossibly broad as asking for a picture of a guy with hair, she decides it is time to hunt him down for some actual details. Just as she stands up to begin her search, two of her energetic classmates, Yiwon and Subin, suddenly ambush her near the classroom door. Sunwoo turns around with her usual polite charm, greeting the duo as they practically bounce off the walls with excitement. Whatever massive revelation they are harboring, it is clearly important enough to put her mustache portrait investigation on immediate hold. Yuan eagerly shoves her smartphone screen right towards Sunwoo, revealing her personal YouTube channel where she regularly uploads school vlogs. It turns out Sunwoo made a brief, unintentional cameo in her latest video while heading out for lunch, and the internet did what it does best. The clip blew up to a staggering 1.38 million views, with thousands of enthusiastic comments raving about Sunwoo's visuals. Smelling future ad revenue and instant digital fame, Ewan loses no time pitching a full collaborative vlog project, even promising to treat Sunwoo to something nice once the channel gets monetized. After contemplating the proposal for a quick second, Sunwoo cheerfully agrees to join in, completely oblivious to how a sudden wave of online stardom might turn her peaceful school life upside down. As the afternoon paints the town in warm golden hues, Jin-yong and Sunwoo walk home side by side, each processing the subtly shifting dynamic between them. But high school life moves at breakneck speed, and a fresh morning brings brand new strategic advice from the single least qualified romantic advisor on the entire planet. Bright and early the following morning, Jason, the miniature, muscle-bound imaginary friend, perching comfortably on Jin-yong's shoulder, issues today's high-stakes mission, asks Sunwoo to visit the school's snack store together. Jin-yong immediately panics that such a direct invitation will make his motives painfully obvious, but his miniature drill sergeant firmly dismisses his doubts, insisting that action is the only true path forward. Stealing his courage, our socially anxious hero marches through the crowded corridor, viewing every female student as a featureless gray rock while pumping himself up. He finally arrives at classroom 25, taking a heavy breath to settle his racing pulse before opening the sliding door. But the moment he steps inside, his trusty shoulder mentor vanishes in a puff of smoke, leaving Jin-yong entirely to his own devices. Stepping across the threshold, Jin-yong freezes as he walks right into an active live or session. Yiwon is pointing her phone like a professional film crew, trying to coax Sunwoo into revealing her name to her exploding audience, while Sunwoo coyly insists her identity remains a secret. Surrounded by Greystone classmates and a camera lens, Jin-yong's simple mission just ran into a massive wall. Inside classroom 25, Sunwoo is completely locked in, flashing her absolute best idol smiles while posing for her classmates' exploding school vlog channel. Spotting the active production session in full swing, Jin-yong immediately realizes that interrupting her right now would be a major tactical disaster, choosing to quietly turn on his heel and make a stealthy exit back into the hallway. Just as our socially anxious hero slinks out the sliding door to try his luck another day, Sunwoo catches the sudden movement out of the corner of her eye. She glances back at the doorway with a surprisingly sharp and focused gaze, clearly registering his brief appearance before he vanishes completely from sight. With Sunwoo constantly surrounded by enthusiastic classmates and busy shooting video content all over campus, Jin-yong's high-stakes mission to invite her to the school store is officially postponed. Watching her shine from the sidelines during sunset, he sighs in defeat, realizing that competing with her overwhelming social calendar is a battle he is simply not equipped to win. Later that afternoon, Jin-yong walks home under a warm golden sky, casually debriefing the day's total tactical failure with his miniature shoulder-dwelling advisor, Jason. He openly marvels at how effortlessly Sunwoo manages her massive popularity, completely oblivious to the fact that the very girl he is praising is currently walking just a few paces behind him. Before Jason can offer any further questionable romantic advice, he vanishes in a sudden puff of smoke the moment Sunwoo calls out Jin-yong's name. She catches up with her signature playful smile, teasingly, asking why he is walking down the street talking to himself again, leaving our flustered hero frantically scrambling to cover his tracks. Sunwoo playfully nudges him and teasingly asks if he secretly created an imaginary friend to talk to, accidentally hitting the absolute bullseye on his deepest secret. Thoroughly panicked by her unnervingly accurate guess, Jin-yong quickly changes the subject, offering to walk her to the bus stop just to salvage what remains of his fragile composure. Their quiet stroll together comes to a sudden halt near the brick wall when Yuan and Subin pop out of nowhere to greet them. The energetic vloggers eagerly ask Sunwoo if she has time to shoot a quick after-school vlog, putting Jin-yong's carefully planned walk home on immediate hold. However, the second Yuan notices Jin-yong standing right beside her, Subin frantically whispers in her ear to read the room and step back. Realizing they are directly intruding on a private moment between the two, the duo quickly excuses themselves, reminding Sunwoo to film with them tomorrow before taking off down the street. As the girls walk away chatting about buying Sunwoo some tukabaki later to repay her for her constant vlog help, Sunwoo's cheerful mask completely slips. Her facial expression turns horrifyingly cold, casting an intimidating dark shadow that reveals the intense, terrifying annoyance boiling beneath her polite exterior. Walking side by side with her, Jin-yong ponders Sunwoo's complex social circle, recalling that their classmate Suk-young said Sunwoo is friendly with everyone in school. But as he casually glances back at her to continue their conversation, a sudden wave of sheer terror washes over him. He catches a glimpse of her terrifying, soul-crushing glare, radiating pure dark menace right next to him. Before he can even process the ominous aura hanging over her head, Sunwoo instantly snaps back into her usual bright, adorable laugh, leaving our thoroughly shaken protagonist wondering if he just hallucinated a terrifying monster. Before Jin-yong can fully recover from her terrifying momentary slip, Sunwoo abruptly announces she made a total blunder and forgot her bus card was already recharged. Manufacturing a sudden errand to excuse herself, our resident drama queen waves goodbye and scampers off into the sunset, leaving him utterly baffled. Staring after her receding figure, Jin-yong feels a lingering chill settle over him as he realizes her agitated reaction was far too extreme for a simple mistake. Sitting quietly on a Amish bench beside a classmate, he recalls Guman's ominous warning that there is something deeply unsettling lurking underneath Sunwoo's perfect mask. Jason materializes to analyze the situation, noting that Sunwoo's hurried getaway confirms Guman's suspicions beyond a shadow of a doubt. The muscular imaginary advisor firmly believes her sudden agitation is proof of something sinister. Determined to unlock her secrets if it brings him closer to her, Jin-yong agrees to investigate her behavior. Satisfied with his resolve, his mustache-toting mentor prepares to hand down their next high-stakes mission. As night falls across the neighborhood park, Jin-yong steps out under the evening streetlights to execute Jason's strategic directive. His target is simple yet crucial. Contact the single person in his small social circle who appears close to Sunwoo and extract any usable intelligence. Moments later, Suk-young strolls into the park wearing casual evening attire, playfully teasing Jin-yong that he shouldn't go falling for her just because he requested a late-night rendezvous. But our laser-focused protagonist wastes zero time on banter, immediately turning the conversation toward the mysterious truth about Sunwoo. Meeting up under the dim evening streetlights, Jin-yong manages to catch fitness enthusiast Soo-kyung right before she heads off to her night job. Soo-kyung fully expects him to ask for some quick workout tips, so she is completely caught off guard when he reveals this urgent meeting is actually about seeking relationship advice regarding Sunwoo. Soo-kyung finds it hilarious and unexpected that he bypassed their resident detective-brained classmate Jimin for relationship guidance. Jin-yong admits he hesitated to reach out to Jimin in the first place, agreeing that bringing up personal matters with that guy always feels just a little too uncomfortable for comfort. Taking a seat together on the park bench, Jin-yong presses on, explaining that Sunwoo looked deeply distressed earlier in the day. He is convinced her troubled expression had nothing to do with simply refusing to film a vlog, so he begs Soo-kyung to share if she has ever seen Sunwoo react with that same heavy face before. Soo-kyung rests her chin on her hand and thinks deeply until a particular memory comes back to mind. She agrees to share what she knows, but only after forcing Jin-yong to promise that he will refrain from doing any more of his bizarre, attention-grabbing pull-ups on public workout equipment from now on. She flashes back to an ordinary afternoon in school, where a small crowd of female classmates had gathered around Min-young's desk. Everyone was cheering and blowing out candles on a fresh birthday cake, turning the classroom into an impromptu celebration for a girl they were not particularly close with. When Soo-kyung casually asked if she knew about the event, Sunwoo suddenly froze in visible panic. Facing the expectant gaze of the birthday girl sitting at her desk, Sunwoo nervously clapped her hands together, forcing an overly bright laugh while apologizing and admitting she had completely forgotten all about the special occasion. Sunwoo hurriedly promises to buy Min-young a delicious meal later to make up for her slip-up. Wanting to escape the awkward atmosphere as quickly as possible, she immediately grabs Soo-kyung and makes a hasty excuse about needing the restroom, dragging her away from the classroom scene before anyone can say more. The moment they step out into the hallway, petty classmates waste no time throwing shade behind their backs. They begin openly whispering about how insensitive Sunwoo is, complaining that even though Min-young always looks after her so well, Sunwoo constantly maintains a subtle, unapproachable wall between herself and everyone else. Soo-kyung felt an overwhelming urge to step right in and wreck the gossiping crew on the spot. But when she peeked out into the dark hallway shadows to check on Sunwoo's reaction, her stomach instantly dropped as she realized Sunwoo was staying silently nearby, deeply shaken after overhearing every single bitter comment. Soo-kyung reflects deeply on that hallway memory, recalling that Sunwoo looked less angry and more like someone who had completely given up on expecting real warmth from others. Returning to the present under the night sky, Jin-yong listens quietly, absorbing the heavy revelation on the park bench. Jin-yong reasonably argues that anyone would naturally feel crushed after overhearing classmates trash-talk them. However, Soo-kyung firmly counters that Sunwoo's reaction was far more complicated than basic anger or hurt feelings, leaving our confused hero sitting in silence as he tries to make sense of it. Soo-kyung changes tack, asking him what he thinks about someone who maintains a bright, friendly face with everyone at school. She admits that while it seems like a wonderful trait, she has begun to suspect that Sunwoo's flawless social persona might actually be a suffocating curse. Jin-yong stares back in total bewilderment, unable to comprehend how being warm and popular could be considered a bad thing. Soo-kyung then rises from the bench to head off to her night job, pausing briefly to warn him that trying to truly reach Sunwoo's heart will not be easy. With a playful giggle, Soo-kyung warns that he is bound to suffer quite a bit during this journey because Sunwoo remains a complete mystery. She saunters away into the dark evening, leaving our resident overthinker standing alone to process the ominous advice. Standing alone under the streetlights, Jin-yong tries connecting Soo-kyung's cryptic curse warning with Sunwoo's sad face and Gyumin's subtle observations. When his brain completely overheats from processing zero answers, he turns to his imaginary trench coat-wearing friend Jason for emergency intellectual backup. Puffing on his pipe, Detective Jason confesses he has no brilliant strategy to offer, recommending instead that Jin-yong enter maximum overthinking mode. Jin-yong enthusiastically agrees, deciding his best move is to continuously worry about the situation until something finally clicks into place. Sighing over how unbelievably hard it is to get close to another human being, Jin-yong finishes his late-night mental marathon. The sun rises on a new morning, bringing us right back to the bustling high school campus. Inside the school hallway, classmate Yuan bursts with excitement, rushing over to show Sunwoo that their short video rocketed past 50,000 views in a single day. Yuan insists the viral hit happened entirely because Sunwoo is so pretty, making Sunwoo humorously gag. Sunwoo graciously turns the compliment back on Yuan, praising her editing talent and joking that she better remember her friends once she becomes a massive influencer. But Yuan instantly shoots that down, declaring they are locked in this together as permanent partners, leaving Sunwoo genuinely stunned. Yuan tries relentlessly pressuring Sunwoo into becoming a full-time video partner, tempting her with financial cuts and pointing out her already massive social media following. But when Sunwoo admits she feels deeply uncomfortable putting her face out on the internet, classmate Subin steps in, begging Yuan to back off before she crosses the line. Refusing to let the matter drop, Yuan pushes even harder, dramatically pleading that rejecting a viral fame while the tide is high will break her heart. Sunwoo can only offer an uncomfortable laugh, feeling entirely trapped as our relentless aspiring influencer continues suffocating her with heavy guilt trips. Suddenly, Sunwoo's cheerful front shatters into pure ice, her eyes darkening as she flatly commands Yuan to drop the issue once and for all. The terrifying shift instantly chokes the life out of the hallway, leaving both girls standing in stunned silence after getting hit with her unexpectedly frosty glare. Exhaling softly, Sunwoo immediately flips her sweet mask right back on, lightly joking that she will only shoot videos later when her face stops looking puffy. She casually strolls down the hall with a wave, leaving her bewildered classmates staring in utter disbelief at her lightning-fast, eerie mood swing. The moment Sunwoo disappears around the corner, Yuan fumes over the cold rejection, while Subin agrees that Sunwoo completely overreacted to a harmless proposal. The gossiping duo wastes zero time tearing down her character, complaining that her bizarre attitude ruined what should have been a fun opportunity for everyone involved. Tucked hidden around the hallway wall, Sunwoo stands completely frozen as she overhears every single bitter sentence spoken behind her back. Her stomach drops while listening to her classmates label her as weird and unstable, confirming the exact cycle of gossip and isolation that Soo-kyung described to Jin-yong. Watching history repeat itself right before her eyes, Sunwoo sighs in total defeat at how quickly superficial warmth turns into petty hostility. As the vicious hallway chatter continues shredding her reputation, our isolated heroine succumbs to the bitter reality that no one at this school actually cares about her. Out of nowhere, Jin-yong stumbles right into the middle of the crossfire, foolishly blurting out a reaction the moment Sunwoo's name is uttered. Sunwoo looks on in absolute horror as the gossiping girls turn toward our clueless hero, demanding to know why he is suddenly creeping around their private conversation. Realizing his brain-to-mouth filter just suffered a total meltdown, Jin-yong desperately tries backpedaling out of the mess. He sheepishly scratches his head and stammers that he was merely walking by when he overheard her name, but his awkward stuttering only fuels their rapidly growing suspicion. Flashbacks hit Yuan as she suddenly remembers spotting Jin-yong walking home alongside Sunwoo, causing her face to light up with mischievous glee. She steps up and aggressively interrogates whether the two are secretly dating, sending our resident overthinking detective into a total, flustered panic mode. The hallway drama takes a sharp turn as Yuan leans in close to drop some unsolicited caution, warning a confused Jin-yong to watch his step because school rumors claim Sunwoo is completely off. She turns to Subin for instant validation, who can only stammer back an uncomfortably hesitant agreement. Yuan doubles down on her shade, claiming she only brought it up out of selfless concern that Sunwoo might be leading him on. Unaware that Sunwoo is standing right around the corner, overhearing every bit of fake affection, the gossiping duo continues putting on sweet smiles to mask their bitter backbiting. Jin-yong stands quietly as he processes the absurd accusation that Sunwoo is secretly playing games with him. But as he looks directly at the gossiping pair, his stone perception defense kicks back in, turning their faces into literal gray blocks while our baffled hero wonders if these rocks have completely lost their minds. We start with a solemn reminder. A world completely filled with unconditional love, devoid of hatred or resentment, is nothing more than an illusion. Believing that such a paradise exists on Earth only makes real life far more miserable when reality inevitably crashes down. Back in the hallway, Jin-yong finds himself questioning the petty drama unfolding around him. Looking at his stone-faced female classmates, our four-eyed protagonist wonders if these literal rocks have completely lost their minds by dropping subtle hints about Sunwoo leading him on. The brown-haired girl tries to play the caring classmate, warning Jin-yong to watch his step around Sunwoo. But Jin isn't buying the unsolicited advice and immediately confronts her, demanding to know why she's suddenly spewing weird rumors out of nowhere. Hiding just around the corner, Sunwoo overhears every single word with a racing heart. Jin-yong doesn't pull any punches, pressing the pair directly about whether they're just holding a personal grudge against her, leaving both girls frozen in awkward silence. Realizing their attempt to stir the pot backfired miserably, the ringleader quickly tries to laugh it off as nothing. She tries to make a hasty retreat with her sidekick, hoping to escape before the situation gets any worse. Deep inside Jin-yong's inner psyche, his swole imaginary mentor Jason offers a word of caution. The tank-top-clad voice of reason warns him that getting dragged into schoolyard gossip will only turn into a massive pain in the neck. Ignoring Jason's advice, Jin-yong lunges forward and grabs the brown-haired girl's wrist mid-stride. He calls her out directly, asking why she stopped talking and accusing her of trying to drive a vicious wedge between him and Sunwoo. As Sunwoo watches in utter disbelief, Jin-yong firmly declares that he will decide for himself what kind of person Sunwoo really is. The stunned classmate trembles in his grip, completely overwhelmed by his uncharacteristic intensity. Releasing her wrist, Jin-yong turns on his heel and walks away without looking back. He leaves the duo standing in silence, concluding that talking behind people's backs is childish, petty, and completely beneath him. Sunwoo quietly slips down the staircase after overhearing Jin-yong's intense defense, while the two gossip girls are left standing in the hallway, completely frozen in shock. Neither of them ever anticipated that the quiet four-eyed protagonist would confront them head-on with such overwhelming intensity before casually walking away. Instead of taking the hint to back off and mind her own business, Yuan breaks into a sinister smile. She instantly convinces herself that Jin-yong's passionate outburst is undeniable proof that he and Sunwoo are secretly dating. As Yuan giggles like a full-blown comic book villain over how interesting things are about to get, Subin looks on with growing concern. With her eyes wide and totally unhinged, Yuan excitedly proposes spreading the romance rumor across the entire school, claiming they would just be helping the couple along. Subin frantically tries to pull her back to reality, but Yuan is already far too consumed by her own wicked plot. Before her scheme can even get off the ground, instant karma strikes with zero warning. A massive, shirt-bursting student comes hurtling down the corridor like a runaway freight train, ramming straight into Yuan at full speed and sending her flying onto the hard floor in utter devastation. Subin screams in absolute fury at the human bulldozer for recklessly running over her friend. The guy calmly offers a polite apology for the hit-and-run, but immediately turns the tables by demanding to know why Yuan failed to dodge a clearly visible heavy object charging down the hallway. He deadpans that anyone standing in the middle of a hallway during lunch break should expect a starving person to come barging through. Announcing that today's menu features pork cutlets, the giant casually strolls away, leaving Subin desperately trying to shake her broken buddy back to consciousness. Later, near the main exit, Jin-yong finds himself completely trapped as a heavy downpour drenches the school grounds. Realizing he forgot his umbrella, his imaginary pocket mentor, Jason, offers his usual rugged wisdom, telling our four-eyed hero to just man up and sprint into the rain. As he stares into the storm, Jin-yong mentally connects the dots from all the recent drama. He recalls the ominous warnings about curses, Gyuman's odd comments, and Sunwoo's distressed facial expressions. Connecting it all, he begins to realize that Sunwoo wasn't playing games after all. She was likely just exasperated by nosy classmates interfering in her personal life. The tank-top voice of reason chimes in, gently reminding Jin-yong that everybody carries hidden personal traumas that outsiders can never truly comprehend. Acknowledging that he has his own past struggles that are difficult to explain, Jin-yong agrees with Jason's wisdom and decides it's finally time to stop digging into Sunwoo's private affairs. Just as our four-eyed hero decides to take things slow and respect Sunwoo's personal boundaries, nature decides to dump an absolute monsoon on the school entrance. Standing stranded under the overhang without an umbrella, Jin-yong reaches out to check the rain, completely unaware that Sunwoo has just stepped out behind him. Staring at Jin-yong's back, Sunwoo pauses in hesitation while holding her folded umbrella close. She remembers his intense declaration from the hallway earlier, standing up to their gossiping classmates just to defend her. Gathering up her courage, she takes a gentle step toward the unsuspecting glasses wearer. Suddenly, painful memories freeze her mid-step. She recalls her miserable past of endless schoolyard isolation, classmates walking right past her like she didn't exist, excluding her from conversations, and forcing her to eat lunch completely alone in the cafeteria. With a gentle shake of her head, she brushes away the dark thoughts. Building up her resolve, Sunwoo calls out to Jin-yong and timidly offers to show him a small act of kindness by sharing her umbrella. However, before she can even get the full sentence out of her mouth, Jin-yong spins around with full main character energy and cuts her right off. Beaming like he just won the lottery, our stranded protagonist praises her god-tier timing before shamelessly begging to share her umbrella just until the bus stop. The sheer boldness of his straightforward request leaves Sunwoo completely paralyzed in utter shock. A heavy, awkward silence settles over the rainy entryway as Sunwoo stares at him with wide, unblinking eyes without saying a single word. Slowly melting under her intense gaze, Jin-yong inwardly panics about having food on his face before nervously stammering out to ask if something is wrong. Struggling to find the right words, Sunwoo bypasses all subtle hints and drops a nuclear compliment right to his face, flatly declaring that he is really handsome. Her unexpected bombshell leaves our four-eyed protagonist completely stunned as the chapter comes to a dramatic close. Trapped under the school awning while rain pours all around them, Jin-yong freezes completely as Sunwoo locks her intense purple eyes straight onto him. Overwhelmed by the suffocating silence and her unblinking gaze, our panicked glasses scholar stammers out in utter confusion, desperately asking her if he somehow managed to leave lunch sauce smeared across his face. Before he can even begin to process the awkward tension between them, Sunwoo suddenly drops a massive emotional bomb right to his face by bluntly declaring that he is really handsome. The unexpected praise leaves Jin-yong completely paralyzed with shock, sending his fragile, stone-trained mental circuits into an instant, catastrophic overload as he gasps in sheer disbelief. Blushing furiously behind her long black hair, Sunwoo stammers out a flustered thank you, pops open her pink umbrella, and immediately marches out into the heavy downpour all by herself. A completely bewildered Jin-yong reaches out after her in total desperation, shouting to ask why on earth she is walking away with the umbrella and leaving him completely stranded. As she casually strolls down the rainy street completely dry, Jin-yong is left standing under the building overhang in absolute disbelief. He had fully assumed she brought out the umbrella to share it with him, leaving our hopeless romantic thoroughly abandoned in the cold rain to question his entire understanding of high school romance and basic social etiquette. A few days pass back at school, and Jin-yong notices that Sunwoo is no longer hanging out with her former vlog crew, after catching them talking trash behind her back. Watching her maintain a cheerful front while suffering through quiet social isolation makes him deeply curious about what kind of hidden emotional trauma she might be secretly carrying inside. Determined to figure out the truth behind her guarded behavior, Jin-yong decides he needs to break the ice and get closer to her first. His muscular imaginary advisor, Jason, instantly approves of the ambitious plan, commanding him to immediately execute mission Phase 1 by taking her out to the school store for a quick snack run. Spotting Sunwoo walking down the hallway alongside Suk-young, Jin-yong gathers every single ounce of his courage and calls out her name. He casually points out that today's cafeteria lunch features fried yellow croaker and suggests heading to the school store together instead, only for a voice to suddenly speak up behind her and eagerly agree to his lunch offer. However, that voice belonged to Sunwoo, confirming she was hungry for fried fish before sprinting full speed toward the cafeteria like her life depended on it. Left standing awkwardly in her dust as she disappears, Jin-yong can only watch as Suk-young laughs hysterically, declaring the fried croaker the undisputed champion over his thoroughly crushed male pride. Drowning in heavy denial, Jin-yong tries convincing himself that she simply has an intense passion for fried seafood rather than dodging his invitation. But his imaginary life coach Jason brutally shatters his cope, crossing his massive muscular arms to inform him with cold, hard logic that he just suffered a flawless rejection in broad daylight. Despite the brutal rejection, Jason admits that Sunwoo's behavior is genuinely baffling. From her habit of fleeing at top speed to that totally unprovoked compliment out in the rain, the mustache-toting mentor points out that her strange actions make zero sense, leaving both of them completely clueless about what she is actually thinking or planning next. As Sunwoo scurries down the hallway with her cheeks burning like a ripe tomato, Suk-young cackles, hysterically right in Jin-yong's face. Watching the stone-visaged classmate mock the agonizing pain of romantic rejection, our clueless protagonist grunts in deep denial, desperately clinging to the absurd fantasy that Sunwoo simply had a world-shattering craving for cafeteria fish. Meanwhile, elegant high schooler Choi Yojin makes her entrance before we cut to the local convenience store, where Jin-yong scours the near-empty shelves for a quick lunch. To his immense dismay, the only item left in stock is a terrifying hellfire tonkatsu rice ball, forcing our spicy intolerant scholar to reluctantly accept his doomed culinary fate. Holding his fiery snack, Jin-yong sinks into a spiral of overthinking, recalling how Sunwoo has been subtly dodging him lately. Even though she still returns his polite greetings, she instantly shrinks back with an unmistakable wall of awkward distance between them, leaving him terrified that she is quietly pushing him out of her life. Interrupting his dramatic internal monologue, Choi Yojin suddenly appears right behind him, her eyes locking onto the hellfire tonkatsu, like a hawk targeting its prey. Murmuring softly that the volcanic rice ball happens to be her absolute favorite food, she leaves a thoroughly startled Jin-yong, wondering why this gorgeous stranger is invading his personal space. Through Jin-yong's stone vision filter, Yojin's face instantly transforms into a blank gray boulder, quietly muttering unintelligible nonsense. After his imaginary flexmaster Jason sarcastically advises getting a hearing aid, Jin-yong nonchalantly heads toward the register, coolly convincing himself that if this mysterious rock girl actually needs something urgent from him, she will just have to speak up like an adult. Left completely flabbergasted by his cold, unblinking glare, Yojin finds her curiosity intensely piqued and decides to transform into a full-time stealth assassin. As Jin-yong wanders through the school corridors, she peeks around doorframes like a cartoon ghost, sending prickles of paranoia down his neck as he senses an unseen observer tracking his every footstep. When a muscle-bound classmate invites him for a lunch game of soccer, Jin-yong catches Yojin lurking in the background with her wide eyes pinned straight onto him. Thoroughly weirded out by her silent surveillance, he firmly resolves to ignore the creepy audience, figuring that if she genuinely wants to talk to him, she will eventually break her silent streak. Yet, no matter where Jin-yong goes throughout the afternoon, his mysterious new shadow refuses to give up the chase. Whether he is sprinting across the soccer field, discussing morning jogging on campus benches, or lugging massive towers of paperwork for a teacher, Yojin remains glued to his perimeter like a persistent heat-seeking missile, quietly watching his every move. Realizing he is being relentlessly followed, Jin-yong fake excuses himself with a bathroom emergency to drop a massive stack of papers and sprint down the hall. Catching his secret shadow completely off guard, our stone-visaged scholar nabs her right by the collar before she can make a quick escape. Demanding to know why she's just tracking him like a full-time stalker, Jin-yong discovers that his trembling hostage is actually a first-year student named Choi Yojin. After telling the nervous junior to adjust her volume, Yojin brings up their convenience store encounter, asking if he was looking at her like a disgusting bug. When Jin-yong stammers out a denial, Yojin casually admits she stalked him all day to confirm her suspicion that he looks at almost everyone with absolute disgust. Inviting him to the music room after school to listen to her original song, Yojin drops a wild request, asking him to stare at her like a bug while she performs. As a completely stunned Jin-yong processes her bizarre confession of loving icy, contemptuous glares, Jason steps in to diagnose the junior as totally unhinged. Yojin leans in with a request that catches Jin-yong completely off guard. She asks him to look at her like she's a bug while she performs, confessing that she actually enjoys that kind of gaze. Jin-yong's imaginary friend Jason immediately steps in with his trademark lack of filter, calling her out before dramatic flair takes over. Jin-yong confirms what he just heard, pointing out the obvious truth. Asking someone to glare at you like an insect pretty much lands you straight in pervert territory. Yojin admits she phrased it terribly, though Jin-yong assures her he respects personal preferences. She then invites him to hear her original piano composition, which he agrees to listen to. In the music room, Jin-yong asks about her habit of staying late at school to play. He realizes she is the person behind the rumor known around school as the ghost of the music room. Trying to honor her weird request, Jin-yong forces an over-the-top sinister glare that makes Yojin immediately ask him to stop. Even Jason wonders why she wanted that look in the first place. With time ticking, Jin-yong tells her to start playing. Yojin takes a deep breath at the keys and begins singing her piece aloud in front of him. Jin-yong aggressively claps with a terrifyingly stern face, calling it a masterpiece while Yojin begs him to act normal. Flustered, she reveals it has been 7 years since she last performed for an audience. Yojin opens up about her past, explaining that she has spent years playing the piano in total solitude to escape the crushing weight of public expectations. She specifically requested our stone-obsessed hero to be her private audience because his uniquely blank, emotionless gaze feels entirely free from judgment, offering her a rare sense of comfort she hasn't felt in a very long time. However, as she fidgets and tries to explain her weird request, Yojin mumbles so quietly into her collar that Jin-yong can't hear a single word over her whispering. Caught off guard by her sudden muttering fit, Jin-yong bluntly points out that he can't understand a thing she's saying, prompting the flustered pianist to meekly apologize for being so hopelessly awkward. Sensing her extreme stage fright, Jin-yong offers some surprisingly wholesome encouragement, telling her to just relax and play without stressing over potential mistakes. Flashbacks of past competitions and high-pressure demands from pushy adults loom in her mind, but armed with his comforting reassurance, Yojin takes a deep breath and finally places her hands onto the piano keys. As soon as her fingers hit the keyboard, Yojin pours her entire heart into a breathtaking performance, pairing rich piano melodies with her exceptionally clear singing voice. Sitting quietly on his wooden chair, Jin-yong listens in total awe as the once intimidating ghost of the music room effortlessly transforms the quiet, empty classroom into her own personal concert hall. Out in the hallway, Sunwoo and her classmate freeze in their tracks as the stunning music echoes through the building. Her friend immediately recognizes the legendary ghost of the music room, pointing out that not only is the mysterious pianist playing beautifully, but her singing voice is equally captivating as it floats through the empty school corridors. Shifting topics as they walk down the hall, Sunwoo's friend asks about the sketchbook she's been carrying everywhere. Sunwoo proudly shows off her latest artwork, prompting her friend to burst out laughing at the hilarious sketch of an old man. Sunwoo explains that Jin-yong specifically requested the strange portrait, promising to show it to him once it's completely finished. Back in the music room, Yeojin brings her original piece, titled Untitled, to a flawless conclusion. Striking her final note, she turns around and nervously wrings her hands, looking at Jin-yong with anxious eyes as she timidly asks whether her performance sounded weird or if she made a complete fool of herself in front of him. But instead of delivering mild, polite applause, Jin-yong explodes into full hyper-fanboy mode, loudly praising her incredible talent and proclaiming that her original song is good enough for an immediate professional debut. Showered with an unrelenting barrage of genuine compliments from the guy who usually treats everyone like literal rocks, Yeojin stands completely paralyzed in total shock. Once her surprise wears off, Yeojin opens up about her scopophobia, explaining her deep fear of being watched that usually makes eye contact impossible and kept her from performing. Yet somehow, Jin-yong's unreadable stone stare bypassed all her anxieties, allowing her to break a painful 7-year hiatus and finally share her passion with another human being. Bowing nervously in front of the grand piano, Yeojin timidly calls out to Jin-yong and offers a deeply heartfelt thank you for staying behind to be her audience. She looks up with a sweet, radiant smile, confessing that sharing her original music with him after 7 long years of total silence made her truly and overwhelmingly happy. Watching her bow, Jin-yong reflects on how she stuttered so intensely earlier when trying to raise her voice, making it all the more impressive that she managed to deliver her thanks so clearly. Even his imaginary maestro friend steps in to applaud her effort, agreeing that she expressed her gratitude wonderfully. However, the second Jin-yong tries to take in her warm smile, his relentless stone vision triggers instantly, replacing her head with a literal gray rock featuring a simple, drawn-on face. Imaginary Jason notices his completely frozen stare and asks why he's making such an unreadable expression, forcing Jin-yong to admit to himself that he has zero clue what actual emotion she's wearing behind that boulder face. As evening settles over the quiet school campus, a fellow student bids Yeojin goodbye near the entrance, warning her not to stay late practicing in the music room unless she wants to fuel even more local ghost stories. Yeojin innocently asks what rumors he's talking about, totally unaware that her late-night piano sessions are the sole origin of the school's legendary phantom. Just as Jin-yong is preparing to leave the school grounds, Sunwoo suddenly calls out his name and asks if he wants to walk home together so they can talk about the macho guy drawing he requested. Thrilled by her unexpected arrival, Jin-yong enthusiastically accepts her invite, completely unaware that Yeojin's is standing just a few feet away, silently watching their lively exchange. Watching the two of them stroll away under the warm glow of the sunset, Yeojin reflects on how Jin-yong looks at almost everyone else including her, like bugs or lifeless stones, yet his eyes radiate warmth and animated energy whenever he looks at Sunwoo. Still, Yeojin walks away with a gentle, peaceful smile, completely satisfied, knowing that the blank, non-judgmental stare she relies on to play her music is a unique comfort only he can provide. Finally, in a hilarious post-credits bonus scene, Jin-yong steps up as Yeojin's personal sound engineer. He patiently guides her through volume control practice, helping her transition from an anxious, stuttering squeak into a clear, medium-volume greeting so she can finally talk to people without burying her face directly into her school cardigan. Life has been surprisingly smooth for Jin-yong lately. Between morning jogs alongside fitness enthusiast Suki-young and peaceful after-school piano sessions listening to Yeojin play, his daily routine couldn't be more relaxing. The absolute highlight of his day is walking home alone with Sunwoo. However, an unbearable wall of awkward silence has suddenly sprung up between them, turning their precious private moments together into pure torture. Ever since that fateful rainy evening, neither of them has uttered a single word during their 10-minute strolls. Jin-yong is completely at a loss for how to break the spell and fix whatever broke between them. Desperate for answers, Jin-yong seeks romantic advice from teacher Hong-yeol. She makes no effort to hide her utter annoyance at being bothered with teenage heart troubles during her break. She bluntly diagnoses him as a hopeless beta guy, insisting women only fall for aggressive bad boys. Our resident glass-wearing cinnamon roll is left entirely bewildered by this sudden lecture on masculinity. To push the joke further, she sarcastically instructs him to slick back his hair and aggressively orders Sunwoo to eat ramen at his place. This outlandish advice brings a heavy, stunned silence to the office. Realizing her joke went too far, Hang Yael tries to backtrack, but Jin-yong completely buys into the bad boy philosophy. He enthusiastically thanks her and dashes off to immediately revamp his hairstyle. Though briefly horrified by the chaos she just unleashed, the unbothered teacher quickly decides that watching this impending relationship disaster unfold will at least provide top-tier entertainment. Before she can even process her mistake, Sunwoo walks into the office seeking advice for the exact same awkward tension with her friend. Hang-yeol can only stare in utter deadpan disbelief. Before leaving the teacher's room, Hang-yeol cryptically advises Sunwoo to just find it cute if her friend suddenly gets slicked back hair. Outside, Jin-yong takes the bad boy advice completely to heart, deciding his first step to manhood is changing his appearance, even if he worries a new style might backfire completely. His intense internal debate is interrupted when pianist prodigy Choi Yojin greets him on the street. She playfully teases him for talking to himself out loud, but our laser-focused protagonist walks right past her, obsessing aloud over whether to watch online tutorials or find a professional hair salon. Fed up with being ignored like invisible background noise, Yojin yanks him backward by the collar and angrily accuses him of treating her like a bug. A thoroughly baffled Jin-yong finally acknowledges her presence, only for the two to immediately squabble over who grabbed whose neck first. When Yojin invites him to listen to her latest original piano composition, Jin-yong turns her down, explaining that finding a proper haircut is his top priority today. Spotting her opportunity to help, Yojin eagerly offers to recommend her own highly skilled personal salon. She hands him an exclusive referral card, assuring him top-tier treatment. Delighted by the shortcut, Jin-yong gladly accepts the offer and dashes off toward the address, promising he will listen to her new song the very next time they meet. Jin-yong arrives at the gold-platinum Oh My God hair salon, where suited receptionists immediately confirm his referral from Yojin. Stepping through the doors, he is rendered utterly speechless by an ultra-luxurious marble palace, complete with a full live orchestra serenading the clientele. The staff instantly treat him like a VVIP, ushering him to a massive golden vanity while offering custom musical selections for his haircut. Legendary 30-year veteran stylist Anthony Kim dramatically steps up with golden scissors, promising to give Yojin's special guest the royal treatment. Completely overwhelmed by the absurdly opulent salon, Jin-yong wonders just how wealthy Yojin actually is, while praying his new look turns out okay. The next morning at school, the entire classroom freezes in deadpan disbelief, whispering in shock as an unrecognizable stranger walks through the door. While Jin-yong's classmates whisper in complete disbelief over his new slicked-back hair, our resident glass-wearing cinnamon roll is having a full-blown internal crisis about his unfamiliar reflection. Legendary salon stylist Anthony Kim had assured him that his appearance was officially taken care of. But Jin-yong knows that changing his hair was only half the battle. To fix things with Sunwoo, he must now execute the hardest step of all by behaving like a true bad boy. Spotting Sunwoo strolling down the school hallway alongside fitness enthusiast Soo-young, Jin-yong takes a deep breath and desperately tries to recall teacher Hang-yeol's questionable advice. Channeling every single ounce of artificial toughness he can muster, he puts on his scowling bad boy face and calls out Sunwoo's name, fully determined to shatter the unbearable wall of awkward silence that has ruined their peaceful daily walks home. Both girls turn around in utter surprise, immediately taking note of his sleek and unexpected hairstyle. Soo-young can hardly believe her eyes, while Sunwoo stares back in bewildered confusion at her friend's dramatically transformed look. Standing directly under their attentive gazes, Jin-yong tries his absolute best to maintain a cold, brooding bad boy expression, even as his internal panic begins reaching maximum levels. Fixing Sunwoo with an intense, deadly, serious glare, Jin-yong gathers every drop of courage and forcefully orders her to come to his house right now. The outlandish, overly aggressive demand rings out loud across the crowded school hallway, leaving Sunwoo completely wide-eyed, blushing furiously and utterly stunned by her friend's bizarre, out-of-character behavior. Instantly realizing how absurd he sounds, our poor protagonist panics as his tough guy facade completely crumbles into dust. Sweating profusely under the pressure, a thoroughly embarrassed Jin-yong sheepishly stammers out the second half of Tas Jahangiel's script, awkwardly offering that they could eat ramen together while she's over. His disastrous attempt at bad boy charm leaves the corridor atmosphere twice as awkward as when he started. Without a second thought, Jin-yong blurts out an invitation for Sunwoo to come over to his house, throwing in a casual offer to eat ramen together. Sunwoo stands completely frozen in shock, unable to process the sudden invitation. Sunwoo flusters up and asks why he is inviting her, making Jin-yong realize he skipped every normal boundary and blurted it out without thinking. Panic sets in as he desperately tries to invent a reasonable excuse before things get weird. Before Jin-yong can dig himself deeper, Gyumin arrives to complain about the noise in the hallway. He scolds Jin-yong for causing a disturbance just because he changed his haircut. Gyumin tells them all to scram because their noise is distracting him from studying for the upcoming exams. He even asks if Jin-yong has completely given up on life. As Gyumin walks away muttering that none of them are normal, Jin-yong gets a sudden spark of inspiration. He immediately latches on to the exam excuse to save his blundered invite. He quickly clarifies that he meant studying for exams together at his house, offering to tutor her in any subject. Relieved by the logical reason, Sunwoo hesitantly agrees. Suki-young declines joining them due to her part-time job, leaving Jin-yong to lock in the plan to wait for Sunwoo right after school. As they part ways, Sunwoo stands flustered while Jin-yong struts off trying to act smooth. Internally, his heart is pounding out of his chest after pulling off what felt like a total miracle. Jin-yong marches down the hallway in utter disbelief, celebrating the fact that Sunwoo is actually coming over to his house. After school, the two walk together in tense silence through the neighborhood until Sunwoo points out her apartment building. They ride the elevator up in quiet awkwardness, both far too nervous to break the silence. Upon reaching floor 13, Jin-yong welcomes Sunwoo inside his apartment, only for his mother to greet them from around the corner. The second they walk in, Jin-yong's mother looks up in absolute disbelief. Before anyone can even unpack their bags, she immediately starts hollering for her husband to witness this once-in-a-lifetime historical event. Jin-yong's dad wanders out expecting a fire, only to hear that his son actually brought a girl over. After Sunwoo politely introduces herself, Dad processes the shock for a brief second and calmly tells them to have fun. Mom scolds her unbothered husband for his dry reaction, suddenly connecting the dots to Jin-yong's recent haircut. Seeking an exit from the awkward interrogation, Jin-yong quickly suggests they head straight to his room to study. Once inside his room, the study session officially begins. Jin-yong finds himself totally distracted by Sunwoo's cute ponytail, though he quickly begins to suspect she might just be hiding behind her textbook instead of studying. A knock at the door breaks the tension as Jin-yong's mother asks for help carrying heavy side dishes down to the car for his grandparents. Always eager to impress, Sunwoo instantly jumps at the chance to help out. Down in the parking lot, they load up the trunk with an endless mountain of food. Sunwoo charm offensives her way into Mom's heart by complimenting her cooking, earning an open invitation to come over any time. When Dad innocently suggests driving to the grandparents' house alone, Mom delivers a swift reality check for his lack of romantic awareness. She turns back to Jin-yong and pointedly emphasizes that they will be gone for 2 whole hours. As the car speeds away, a heavy awkwardness settles over the pair. Realizing they're standing out in the open, A flustered Jin-yong stammers out a suggestion that they head back upstairs to the apartment. Walking back down the corridor, the reality of the situation hits Jin-yong like a freight train. They are now totally alone together. Panic takes over, and before he can stop himself, he accidentally mutters out loud that this situation is dangerous. Just when Jin-yong thinks the awkward tension cannot get any higher, they arrive at the elevator only to find a bold notice declaring it out of order. Realizing they have to trek up 13 full floors, Jin-yong immediately begins to panic for Sunwoo, remembering that she suffers from anemia. Sunwoo quickly reassures him, mentioning that she has been taking her iron supplements regularly. She then flashes a cute smile and playfully asks if he will carry her if she collapses, causing our easily flustered hero to stammer out a nervous promise to be her personal rescue squad. Determined to be her ultimate safety net, Jin-yong strategically trails one step behind her as they begin the grueling climb. But after just a few flights of stairs, the severe strain takes its toll, leaving Sunwoo gasping for breath and sweating heavily as her strength rapidly drains away. Right on cue, an imaginary doctor manifests in Jin-yong's mind to deliver a formal lecture on how anemia deprives the blood of oxygen during intense physical exercise. But before the theoretical lesson even finishes, Sunwoo's eyes daze over, and her body sways helplessly off balance. Sunwoo loses her footing completely and begins falling backward down the concrete staircase. Adrenaline surges through Jin-yong as he realizes that letting her hit the steps could result in a catastrophic injury, driving him to throw his arms forward with every ounce of speed he has. Refusing to let her get hurt, Jin-yong leaps into action and swoops in from behind, wrapping Sunwoo in heart-pounding hero catch right on the stairs. Shocked and blushing profusely in his tight embrace, Sunwoo looks back as the chapter leaves us on an absolute cliffhanger.